All right, live once again. And in this live stream, I want to talk about the concept of motivation and then how that relates to gratitude and how many prophets use these tendencies that we all have for profit. And I think motivation in general is something that, on one hand, a lot of people feel that they lack. And I would say is evidenced and validated by a lot of the manifestations we see in the world and a lot of the frustration that people walk around with as a result of not getting or having what they want. And how I think motivation is in reality a lower form, or let's just say a less developed manifestation or expression of discipline. And actually, if a person has discipline, if they have focus, if they have purpose, if they have meaning, then actuality, motivation isn't even really required. And I can say that in my personal experience, I really never feel motivated. I have to think and remember and spend time to even find meaning for that term in my brain, because when people talk about it, I don't actually understand it anymore. And I want to talk about these things and expand on it and share some things that I think are actually helpful and useful, because one recurrent thing that I see in comments from my videos is kind of this idea that they're negative, or it's a downer, or it's not inspirational, or it's not motivational, or it's not overtly stimulating people in that way. Whereas I would tend to disagree. I mean, obviously, because I'm making the video, but more importantly, disagree because typically why people are not motivated is usually either out of confusion or some type of paralysis or some type of hesitation within themselves. Motivation isn't actually the thing. It's either they don't know what to do, so they're confused, or what they think they should do isn't actually the right thing, so it doesn't work, or they're just kind of like a record player, just keep skipping. They're just stuck on the same track, stuck in the same loop in like hesitation. So it's not they actually need motivation, it's they need clarity and they need discernment and they need to have a better sense of solving the problem, meaning being able to identify what the problem is and then what the appropriate solution is based on the desired outcomes that they're seeking. So motivation isn't actually required for any of that. So that's why I disagree with saying like, oh, your videos are negative, or oh, you're mean, or oh, it's difficult, or it's not motivational, or it's not inspirational, or any other kind of fill in the blank thing. And I just think if we actually understand what people mean by the term and then break that down and actually look at it, maybe it turns out to be true, maybe it doesn't. Typically, what people mean by motivation is just stimulation. I need to feel like hyped up. I need to feel like I just drank a bunch of coffee and now I can get things done or do something. And it's like, that's not motivation. That's just stimulation. That's something very different. Whereas if you actually have the discipline, you have the purpose, the meaning, the some capacity of dedication, then motivation is kind of like not even really in the arena. But of course, that's a process of development. And as humans, we maybe start from a different place on that process. And maybe at different times in our lives, we find different whatever, right? I mean, it's the human condition. For whatever reason, there's something within us that, even though we may know what we should do, we may even have done it and have experienced the benefits, but yet for some reason there's still something inside of us that's like, nah, I'm not going to do that. And I can't tell you, within my own life many times, and then many things that I've observed in other people and I've communicated with them about, is how often we experience an issue or a problem and we make it into this bigger thing than it actually is. We make it into something other than what it really is. And then that, of course, just takes us in a whole other direction. And the more we do that, the bigger this thing seems to get, the bigger the problem seems to get, and the more complicated and convoluted and all these different things it starts to be. But that doesn't mean that it actually is. So, again, going back to problem solving and understanding, if we have those things and we can accurately apply it to at least some degree, then that can really resolve and bypass a lot of the things. But I guess for a lot of people, that's, not ideal or not applicable or not appealing. So I think in general, this is more so what motivation really is and what comes down to. And where that can fall apart is maybe that person, maybe they really don't even want what they're think they should be motivated for. So that's why they have no attraction or natural magnetism towards it. Maybe it's obligation, maybe it's expectation, maybe it's some other thing which is not very rewarding or not really even accurate, let's say. Or maybe they haven't found the right reason for them. They haven't found the right meaning, or they haven't found purpose, or they haven't found some type of focus or dedication. So then, of course, the rest of that is absent. So it's like motivation isn't the solution. The solution to getting motivation is putting in the right conditions by which that quality will naturally arise as an implicit, necessary outcome. So it's kind of like putting the cart before the horse in a kind of way. Because if you find the right reasons, then motivation is a kind of implied and not even necessarily a thing, because what happens is with the reason is good and you move directly to action. So you don't have the in between stage of like, okay, I'm motivated, I got to feel motivated. No, it's just action without hesitation or without more kind of just procrastination, which more often than not, that is what people are actually doing, is procrastination. So there's massive industries profiting from people's procrastination. Oh, I need to read a book about productivity. I need to read a book about motivation. I need to attend a motivational, inspirational talk. Or there's all these people that are like inspirational thought leaders. It's like, what does that even mean? You just profit from people's lack of clarity and sense of procrastination, and you kind of entertain them like with a baby with like a toy, and like whittle some things around and maybe hype up their adrenaline and their emotional thing, and they're like, oh my god, now I have the thing. And I can tell you, I have friends, I can I, I that illustrate this perfectly. On friend A is a person who did all of the motivational, inspirational, self-help, self-improvement, productivity trainings and seminars and that whole thing. Manifestation, law of attraction, goal setting, vision boards, affirmations. Cool. And then I have another friend who's never done any of that. Who do you think is the millionaire out of these two people? Who do you think has multiple times created $1 million businesses? It's not the first person. It's the second person. Because if they both have the same amount of time in a day, what's more likely to lead to making money? Doing an activity or an action where the consequence is making money seems like a more efficient and direct route to achieving that goal versus what the other person, friend A, has been doing for 10 years, which is, getting prepared and getting motivated, getting organized, getting inspired and inspiring others, and coaching and consulting and vision boarding and setting goals and manifesting and all these types of things that actually don't have really anything to do with, I want to do this, and this is the path that will lead me to there, so I am going to do that. Done, period, end of story. And I think that kind of really sums it up. And of course, everything I listed from friend A can have meaning, can have purpose, can have use, Obviously goal setting is makes sense to know the direction in which you're trying to go. Unless you have some idea or some definition of that, obviously, then you're not going to hit it. But if that's exclusively what you do and what you focus on, and constantly just waiting for inspiration and consulting with thought leaders and all this type of just LinkedIn sort of culture, it, it just doesn't lead to the outcome. And that, it just leads to kind of a weird, again, another example of just people putting the cart before the horse. Like if I go on LinkedIn as an example, there's all these thought leaders and revolutionaries and chief visionary officers and people with these grandiose job titles and descriptions of themselves. And I'm like, in reality, you just post on social media once a day and say some inspirational thing that you rehash from like Gary Vaynerchuk or Alex Hormozzi or any of the other people at the top of the food chain. And then that somehow makes you like a thought leader or like a revolutionary or visionary or a high performance coach for people that want to achieve infinite abundance or whatever. And it's like, well, usually how that should happen is you should maybe yourself achieve infinite abundance. And then as a side effect of that process, maybe if you want to tell other people about it, that's cool. Or maybe if you do something really meaningful and impactful in the world, then people might refer to you as a thought leader or revolutionary or some type of creative genius or whatever. But the fact is you would have to actually maybe do that first, and then that would actually be a thing in the world. And then people would, as a side effect, be like, wow, that's that thing. So it's like people are conflating, oh, I'm changing the world. I'm so motivated because I'm posting on LinkedIn and I'm interacting with 5 accounts and 5 comments a day, and I'm doing my social media strategy and I'm changing the world and I'm motivated. I'm a thought leader. And it's like, you're just you're like basically just doing glorified doom scrolling is more or less what you're doing, which has nothing to do with any of the grandiose terminologies that you're applying to yourself. But I guarantee you they're all motivated and they're all inspired and they're all doing these things, which is fine. But it seems to really have things backwards and seems to have the cart before the horse. But these are, again, prime candidates for profiteers to monetize their lack of clarity and lack of meaning and purpose and just general lack of productivity. Because that's the other thing is like people think productivity is I have to get a bunch of things done and have this like massive overflowing work day, which it's like, yeah, maybe if you're, I don't know, Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or Alex Hormozzi or, people that are running multiple large companies and doing lots of things, sure. But it's like, again, you're like just posting on social media or you're just working like a 9 to 5 or something of that capacity. I don't think that's really the same thing. And I think oftentimes what is a better approach is figuring out what you're actually trying to achieve. Figure out the actual 1 to 3 activities that are most directly going to lead to that, and then just focusing on those. So it's like you might be really productive, but that might not take a lot of time. It might take a lot of time to get to the point to where you can do those few things, but then eventually those few things might only take a very short amount of time, but they can create a lot of results from a small thing versus this idea of like, I've got to do a million things. But then what happens is you define it as doing a million things, which by default your brain won't want to do. Absolutely. The human animal is not going to want to have to do all of those different things. So then what are you going to do? You're going to procrastinate. It's kind of a self-defeating thing because you just defined it as this insurmountable, massive productivity, inspiration kind of ordeal that's going to change the world, which is all very grandiose and very divorced from reality. So of course you're not going to really believe in it because it's not really actually true. So you're not going to actually be motivated to do it. So you're not going to be genuinely inspired because you don't actually believe in it. So then of course you're not going to do it. But that's just because of how you defined it or how a person defined it. So it's inherently self-defeating. So it just sometimes comes back to the power of actually understanding what it is we say, what it is we actually mean, because those have direct consequences and feedback loops to then how we actually take action or not. And I'm saying all of this as someone who went through all the self help, personal development, motivation, inspiration, goal setting, business building, all those kinds of things. I spent many years in those worlds, going through it. And I realized, well, do I have anything to show for it other than being inspired and having visions? Not necessarily. Oh, so that's different than actually doing something. Oh, yeah. Um, so this is just an arena which is profiting largely off of people's lack of clarity and purpose and meaning. Just like how someone might go real deep into conspiracy theories. And I've done that, spending years watching all the documentaries and the hidden stories behind everything, the true agendas, and studying geopolitical, monetary driven actions and alternative history and all these different things. And then after a period of time, what do I have to show for it? Nothing. Is my life any better? No. Am I able to show up in any more meaningful way within the world? No. Am I able to create any more value in the world for myself and other people? No. Do I feel generally more paranoid, fearful, afraid, hopeless, uh, and desperate? Yeah, because it's like, well, it doesn't matter what I do because there's these other parties that are always going to do these things. And maybe now I feel more isolated because, oh, everyone else doesn't get it and they don't know and they don't have the secret insider knowledge. So, okay, really the net effect of all of that time and energy invested is largely negative. Okay. So then was that a really great usage of my time? Knowing that I am for sure going to die one day. I don't know when that is. I don't know how that could occur, but it's for sure going to happen. And the finite time that I have in my life was spent on something that produced a net negative result for me. But then I'm going to tell myself that somehow that's a good thing or that's positive. That doesn't really add up to anything. So I think it's useful to ask these questions. I think it's very, very useful and beneficial to have these kinds of mindsets and conversations. And I find it very bothersome and really quite odd when people are like, "Oh my God, you're so negative. It's such a downer." And I'm like, so telling people things that could very likely prevent them from wasting their life and their precious time that we have on this planet and investing their energy and time and resource into things that probably won't produce results and generally won't add a net positive effect to their life and the life of the people around them. That's negative. That's a downer. That's mean. That's harsh. Okay, then I then I guess we have very different definitions of life because I think, to use another example, to shift to a different context, let's say as it pertains to internal arts or access to spiritual teachings or spiritual knowledge, right? Let's say a person has access to those kinds of things through the grace of God or karma or synchronicity or serendipity or hard work or blind luck or whatever causative factor led them to that, right? So in my mind, obviously you should be grateful for that. You should be glad about that. Of course, I think that is the best appropriate response to that opportunity because that's all it is. It's an opportunity. And how that gratitude should manifest and express, in my opinion, is through dedication, focus, discipline, hard work, and genuine effort to make the most of that opportunity, meaning admitting I'm wrong, admitting I don't have this right, admitting I can improve, admitting I need to grow, admitting I need to, you know, put in more time or effort or energy or efficiency or effectiveness or whatever. To me, that's the consequence of being grateful for the opportunity in there. Whereas in modern times, what people do is go on the internet and kind of emotionally masturbate to the world. I'm so grateful. I'm so blessed. I'm so abundant. And just have this whole emotional catharsis and then get some congratulation and validation from other people. And then just kind of stay stuck in that sort of strictly emotional space, which, of course, is great. But where's the dedication, the focus, the discipline, the investment of time and energy? Where's the humility whereby you are willing to sacrifice yourself, your personality, your belief system, your ego, your past experiences? You're willing to sacrifice and put all of those things to the side in pursuit and in dedication of this opportunity that you've been given and this training or methodology or teaching or whatever it might be. To me, I personally believe that's the correct approach. And I think that's the most respectful, grateful thing you can do is try hard, is have humility, is admit your weakness, your faults, your efficiencies, your excesses, and dedicate yourself to a more efficient pursuit of those things. To me, that's humility and that's actual gratitude because it's something which directly translates to real action, which produces real results and real transformations in the actual real world, not just an emotional abstraction or a mental idea or a temporary self congratulatory idea, but actually something. And then part of that process is, oh, here's the 10,000 errors that I probably will make and am making. And maybe I don't want to make them. Why do I not want to make them? Because I'm grateful for the opportunity to do this thing. And out of that gratitude, I want to apply myself as best as I possibly can within the limited time and the limited constraints that I have as a human being out of respect for that thing and out of respect for all of the people who struggled and sacrificed themselves for it, to discover it, to organize it, to codify it, to pass it on, whatever, out of respect to them, out of respect to the teacher, out of respect to the lineage, out of respect to myself, maybe I want to be better and improve and solve problems and be motivated and be dedicated and try to at least give it a try to whatever capacity that I can muster based on all of my personal limitations and human ignorance. To me personally, that's what I believe and that's what I do. And that's what motivates me in my own personal journey and my own personal life. Everyone else can have their own interpretation or their own experience or their own belief system or different ways of doing things. I'm just saying, in terms of motivation, gratitude, and solving problems and having clarity and these types of things. That's why I say what I say. That's why I think what I think. That's why I make videos in this capacity. So then when people are like, you're mean, you're harsh, your videos are negative, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, are they? I can see how it comes off that way compared to a lot of what's out there, which is mostly just people wanting to be confirmed and patted on the back and emotionally sort of coddled, which is fine. I don't have any issue with that. It's just not personally my goal and my aim or my mission or my interest. And then on the same time, I can also see it where times where I was actually kind of a dick. And the funny thing is, I'm so much of a dick that when someone told me that, they were like, well, people think you're being a dick because you're kind of like speaking in this way and being sarcastic and doing these things. And then I realized I'm like, oh, actually, that's kind of self defeating and harming my overall purpose. I might think it's kind of funny and entertaining, and I might just be doing it because also people think, some people do think that's funny. But at the same time, I could actually improve and be better and be more clear because what I actually really mean and really think and is really important, how can I actually really dial that down and try to get much more precise and clear on what that thing actually is so that I sleep better at night and I have more peace of mind because I know at least what I said was my best effort to actually be as clear as I possibly could so that if someone doesn't like it or they disagree with it or have a problem or they think I'm an asshole or they personally attack me or they threaten my life or they threaten the life of people that I know or they do any manner of online harassment that I have experienced and do experience and probably will experience because this is how people operate, then at least I can fully 110% stand behind and believe in what I did and what I said because I at least gave it the most degree of mental clarity that I possibly could. Partially that's made easier now because I am less affected by the significant amount of head trauma and brain damage that I'd experienced early on in my life. Because a lot of my life was lived trying to get out the clarity or the things that I had in my head, but I just couldn't do it, or it wouldn't come out properly because of, a number of things. And I think on one hand, people would be like, "Oh, you have unresolved trauma," or "Your parents were mean to you," or some aspect of like that. But I think in reality, when I really look at it, I think it's a lot more to do with the fact of probably having 10 concussions when I was a kid, and then some when I was an adult, and then multiple car accidents. I think it was a little bit more to do with that, in the terms of just like nervous system and brain just not being that efficient and effective. So then I mean, I think a lot of it was neurofeedback because I was training and I was doing all these things, but it was like just bouncing up against how misaligned my nervous system was. And then when I started doing neurofeedback, it kind of started actually being like, oh, and then my training just like jumped massively and they kind of go off of each other. So then what did I do? I made videos telling people, hey, I had these things happen to me. This thing really helped and really worked and really did all these things. And coincidentally, it's done this for thousands of other people as well because that's what it does. What did people say? I don't know. That's bullshit. I don't know. I don't think that's going to work for me. I don't think that's real. Most people see, Bo, that's fake. It sounds like bullshit. I can just do it myself. That doesn't make sense. That's a gimmick. All these manner of things. And I'm like, so you reached out to me because maybe you have anxiety, depression, and all these mental, emotional things. I tell you the thing, which probably will resolve it and has resolved those things for a lot of people. And your response is, oh, you can just do it yourself. And then I'm thinking, so then why are you doing this? Um, so anyways, I just wanted to add some clarity and context for really what's happening. And also too, yeah, I definitely, yeah, yeah, that's what I'll say about it. And that's why I think neurofeedback is really one of the best things. But again, I see it where it hits this self-protective disease mechanism in people where they're confronted and faced with, here's the solution. Oh, no, 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 no. That's not gonna work. No, 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 that's bullshit. No, 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 that's fake. No, 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 no. And just okay. I mean, I did that. I remember when I first encountered neurofeedback years ago, I was like, nah, I'm not gonna do that. That doesn't seem like the thing. It's like, yeah, it actually was. Um, so yeah, I think I covered motivation large in part. I think I covered gratitude to a certain extent. I think gratitude is a very beneficial mental quality to develop. I think it's a mental quality more so than particularly a transient emotion. I think it's a useful mental exercise for really all of us to do. I'm not a fan of like pimping out your emotions on the internet for validation, which is why I don't tend to talk about that side of things. Like, if I went on here and I was like, yeah, I did this gratitude practice and I bawled my face off and I cried and it was an emotionally moving thing. Um, to me, that seems a little bit weird to go on the internet and just tell people about. Um, I think I think there still should be certain things that people do for themselves in a private manner. Kind of like if I went and volunteered or I went and donated money, like I think maybe just keep that to yourself. Like if you do good deeds, then why do you have to go on the internet and celebrate it and get congratulated for it? Maybe just do it and get nothing in return for it. I think maybe that's the better way to go about it. So I think some of these other qualities like gratitude, I can say a lot about from a personal level, but a part of it is also just my individual emotional life. And I can tell you that I already share a decent, maybe too much about my own self and my life. And I can tell you, usually that comes back to be used against me, which is why certain things from my personal life I haven't shared because I already know there will be people that will just be, Dr. Freud or Jung or just passive aggressive and just turn that right back around and use it to attack me, which is kind of weird, but this is just how people operate anonymously on the internet. Um, and I can say that as someone trying to present an idea or a concept or a principle on the internet, the options are basically as follows. You can talk about your personal experience, but if you do that, you're a narcissist or you're self absorbed or you're trauma dumping or you are hurt speaking or there's different things that there's always new terminologies. Okay, so if you do that, okay, but let's say you just say, oh, I'm just going to talk about other people, their experiences, what they do. Oh, well, now you're an asshole. Now you're judgmental. Now you're a know it all. Now you think you know better than everyone else because you're talking about principles and concepts and ideas through other people's experiences. Okay, so if you talk about yourself, you're a self absorbed narcissist or you're trauma dumping or you're whatever, fill in the blank. But if you talk about other people, now you're an asshole, you're critical, you're judgmental, you're a know it all, or you're projecting. Okay, so you can't talk about yourself, you can't talk about other people. Okay, if you just speak numbers, figures, science, data, math, you're dry, you're boring, it's not interesting, or you're racist because math is racist and science is misogynist and oppressive, or it's just abstract science and you can't trust it. It doesn't have to, it's not real human life experience because it's abstract and it's removed. Okay. So you can't talk about your experience. You can't talk about other people's experiences. And now you can't use science or data or numbers. Okay. I guess you could use poetry, creative expression. Okay. But now if you do that, no one knows really what you're saying, or it sucks because maybe you're not good at poetry or maybe you're not a good artist or whatever, fill in the blank. Okay, so what are you left with in terms of communication? Can't talk about your experience because it's invalid because it's your subjective experience and you're a narcissist and you're self-absorbed because you're talking about it on the internet. You can't talk about other people's experiences because you're judgmental, harsh, mean, critical, know-it-all, you're projecting. Okay, you can't just use like science and facts and figures because that's just boring, or it's abstract science, or it's racist, or it's oppressive because it's science. Or you're a co-opted member of big pharma or the the system or whatever. So then at a certain point, you're basically just like not really left with anything in any way of actually communicating with people in any effective or useful manner. And then those same criteria apply if you talk about internal arts or certain principles or certain aspects of life. These are this is it. So it just infinitely entertains me the lengths at which people go to tear other people down, which is okay, fine. But where that really hits the road is that just keeps themselves stuck. That just keeps them treading water. That just keeps them frustrated or angry or depressed. So then let's talk about, why are people angry? Why do people experience anger and frustration? Usually, aside from legitimate, boundary inferences or threats to their, life, things of that nature, generally in a normal sense, it's because they aren't getting what they want, or something isn't the way they think it should be, which the emotional experience is anger or frustration. And that's a lot of times what drives a lot of people. So then if you don't know what you actually want, or you don't know how you actually want things to be, then of course you'll be very frustrated. And then if you take that further, you don't know what to do to get the thing that you don't know that you actually want. What's going to be the side effect of that? You're going to be depressed, because over a period of time you were angry and you were frustrated, but you see no actual path out of it. So then that flips to depression, lethargy, no motivation, no drive. And these things just feed off of and cycle each other. So that's where I think sometimes the solution is figuring out what you actually want and how you can actually go about getting it. And if you can't actually get the thing, why not? Is it because you're incompetent? Is it because you're ineffective? Is it because you're uneducated or uninformed or unskilled? Okay, how can you become skilled in that endeavor that will hopefully lead you to the thing that you want? I think that's pretty much it. But then you have industries based in, like I said, profiting off of people's lack of clarity and confusion, which typically the people at the top of that food chain and pyramid are also just as confused, but they just figured out how to monetize their confusion in a way that profits off of other people's confusions, which is why it works through attraction. Like attracts like. I'm confused, you're confused, but I've positioned myself in a greater position of power and influence, and I'm experiencing the same confused state that you are. So I'm able to speak about it to some degree of empathy in such a way to motivate you to buy and purchase the product or service or good or training or motivation that won't maybe actually really tangibly produce anything for you, but will at least scratch the same emotional itch that we both have. And then I'll profit off of it. And I think beyond like actual pragmatic, useful aspects of therapy, I think a lot of it at a certain point falls in on itself to that position where it's the blind leading the blind, the confused leading the confused, and this just cycle of just profiting and keeping people stuck. Versus at a certain point, the issue is just incompetence or ineffectiveness or lack of clarity or lack of skill at a certain point. Now, obviously, there's plenty of exceptions where that's not the case. Of course, I'm not saying there isn't. I'm saying in general, in many different circumstances, as we face ourselves in human beings, this is the actual problem. I don't know what I want and I don't know how to get it. So I'm frustrated, I'm angry. And then because of that stretch out over a long enough period of time, I'm depressed. But then that builds up over a long enough period of time because I don't really know what I'm doing or why I'm doing it and where I'm going. So then I feel anxious because everything is unknown and everything is kind of poorly defined and not having structure and parameters. So then that's just a cycle that repeats. So then the solution might be, well, what do you actually want? What you're actually going for? And what do you actually mean by those terminologies? And what's genuinely motivating it and driving it? Which allow me to circle back to motivation and finding reasons. And this is an important point because sometimes what actually drives people is not what they think. So, for example, I'll use a hypothetical situation which just occurred that's partially hypothetical, partially real, which Damian Lillard was a player for the Portland Trail Blazers, and he just got traded to the Milwaukee Bucks. But he said from the beginning he wanted to go to Miami, and he's kind of like butthurt that he didn't get to go to Miami. And then the same week that his trade was announced, he filed for divorce, or his wife filed for divorce, or whatever. So, like, just imagine in this scenario, he's saying he wants to go play for the Heat, or he wants to leave Portland because of, you know, they're not a good team. But the thing is, the entire duration of his career, he's been saying, I'm not ring chasing. I'm loyal. Portland gave me my opportunity, like Portland till I die. You know, Bridgetown, Rip City, 100% represent. Like this is where I'm gonna be. But then now all of a sudden, oh, now he wants to trade and he wants to go to Miami, and then now he gets divorced. So I don't know that this is true. I'm just using this as a hypothetical example. What if what was actually happening was he just wants to get away from his wife and get away from the life that he built in this city? And Miami is a place where he could party and meet lots of women and really live like a great bachelor lifestyle that he never has gotten a chance to live because he's been with the girl since he was in college. He's never gotten to party or play the field as a very successful, rich NBA player. And then maybe that's actually really what's driving it, really at the core. So then now he's mad because he can't go to Miami. He has to go to Milwaukee where it's cold and probably the women aren't as hot, and he can't live the, you know, rich bachelor NBA lifestyle, you know, on the other side of the country of his ex-wife and his family and all these other things. I'm just saying hypothetically, this is an example of what is actually the motivating factor. What do people actually really want versus what are they just saying or telling themselves at a certain level? How this relates to motivation is getting a person to investigate their own actual motivating ideas. And that can go positive or negative. Sometimes the best motivation might be to say fuck you to someone else. Like, let's say you are a female and you had a shitty relationship and with your ex-husband and now you're divorced. And your response to that situation is depression, lethargy, beating yourself up, and like really shitting on and hating this guy, talking shit about him. He's such a bad guy, and blah, 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 blah. So that's one way to do it. And then maybe you, because of that negativity, you feel depressed and you don't have any motivation. And you're just lethargic and you just sit around all the time and, you know, you're in this negative space. So maybe in that situation, the best motivation might be like, you know what? Maybe he did do me wrong. And the best payback I can do is say, you know what? Fuck you. I'm going to become a better version of myself. I'm going to work out. I'm going to eat right. I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going to become physically fit. I'm going to get my shit together and get my life together. I'm going to learn some new skills. I'm going to do something and actually manifest my willpower in the world and do something and say, you know what? Look what you missed out on. Look what you screwed up. Look what you did wrong. Look, look what you're missing out on. And now you're the asshole. And I just proved it to you that you're the asshole because I made myself into this other thing. That could be maybe not the greatest, best form of motivation, but based on that situation, maybe that's the maybe that's the lowest hanging fruit. And maybe that's the lowest hanging fruit that could get that person out of that funk and get them moving forward, just as an example. So people, I think it's useful to investigate these things and sometimes invent ideas, invent reasons, invent things. And it might not be the best, the highest, the most positive, whatever thing, but it might get the job done. It might get things moving, it might get things going, which I think is a great opportunity to again illustrate the downside of being positive and being inspired and being motivated and good vibes only and love and light and really that whole side of just overemphasizing these qualities, when in reality what actually drives most of us most of the time is not those things. Most humans most of the time are driven by fear and anger, driven by the lowest aspects of their base desires. And if they're not driven by those things, they're probably actively repressing and fighting against them. So they deal with depression and anxiety and frustration and negative emotions, which just perpetuates the cycle. Where if you can actually lean into, harvest, channel, shape, intelligently use what is already a natural capacity of your organism to lead you to an actually positive place, that makes a lot more sense. Which is why I think, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, 12 years ago, I did a video called Positive Thinking for Pessimists or something like that. And it was basically like, write down all the things that are frustrating you or bothering you or you're annoyed by. And then start there, because for most people, that's so much quicker and easier to access. Like asking someone, what do you want? What's your dream? What's your goal? What's your vision? Sometimes that's like, I don't know, but like what annoys you, what bothers you, what do you not want? That's like, oh, for sure. Like easy, tip of tongue, front of mind, piece of cake. So it's like, okay, start there. But then you can take that and then flip it to its opposite. And then that might actually tell you what you want. Like, oh, I'm just so sick of people that are inconsiderate assholes. Okay. So then you want people in your life that are considerate and maybe see other people for who they are. Okay, that's what you actually want. So then now you can say, are you actually doing that? Is that your behavior? Is that how you show up in the world? Is that how you show up for other people? If yes, okay, now we have 2 points of clarity and, dare I say, empowerment to then filter reality, filter the world, interact with experiences and make choices based on those two levels of empowerment versus just saying, oh, I'm just so sick of people that are inconsiderate assholes. Okay, if you just have that heuristic, you just have that program running, where does that go? More frustration, more anger, more negativity. Cool. When all it took was 90 seconds to say, oh, this is what is like maybe annoying or bothersome or frustrating. Well, what's the opposite? Well, I would prefer if people were nice or kind or considerate. Okay, well, what do you even mean by that? And what actual experiences come into your mind when you think of that? When you think of being considerate, what's the actual loop or the movie that plays out? Or you think of people being assholes? Who are you thinking about specifically? What movies are playing out in that regard? And why? And actually, is that even inconsiderate? Is that person even being inconsiderate? Are they even really an asshole? Or is it just maybe you didn't even communicate what your expectation was? Maybe you didn't even communicate what you wanted or needed. So then how would they even know? Oh, you're just magically assuming and expecting them to know what you want and need without you ever saying anything about it. And now you're frustrated because they don't know and they have no clue about it. When actuality, they might really do that for you if you just even took the time to meet them halfway and communicate like an adult. So I'm just saying that as an example to where people could have this profoundly life altering belief that might not even be true. And it might be completely preventable. It might be largely self created. It might be largely self perpetuated. It might be inaccurate. Or it might actually be true. Maybe that person is really an inconsiderate asshole. But if you never actually sit down and look at it and consider it, you might never really know. And instead, you just stay stuck on the hamster wheel. Versus if you do the 90 seconds of really low level basic thought that I just listed out, and then you can flip it over and say, well, okay, what do I actually want? Oh, I would appreciate if people were considerate. Oh, what does that even mean? What considerate acts do I even like? And am I even myself personally behaving in that manner? Because if you're not actively actually willing to do it and give it and be it, then you're a hypocrite. I expect people to be nice to me, but I'm mean to everyone. Yeah, you're a hypocrite and a liar. So people are not probably going to be that nice to you because you're not even doing it. Oh, I'm mad because people aren't trustworthy. It's like, well, do you trust anyone? Does anyone trust you? Then if not, then if you're not worthy of trust yourself, then of course, like at a certain point, it just kind of seems a little bit too straightforward. But I'm just using it as an example to where if motivation is absent or if clarity or these different things are absent, you can very simply do an exercise and take this thing and then, well, if it's this, but okay, this is the positive thing. Am I actually doing it? If I'm not, then how do I do it? And then what does it actually mean? And then, okay, because people will say, oh, we create our own reality, we're the masters of our universe and law of attraction and visualization and vision boarding and all those kinds of things. But then they won't actually take it over and translate it into real tangible action, which is what I believe is what I just listed out, where that stuff, those ideas, those concepts can translate into something that's actually real. Just like I was saying and talking about earlier with gratitude and how that should manifest as a real action and really manifest as dedication, discipline, focus, drive, determination, sacrifice, humility, these kinds of qualities and behaviors. And if they don't, then I would say perhaps what that person might be labeling as gratitude might not actually be gratitude. Because if it was genuinely a strong enough experience of that actual quality, it would very likely lead to these consequences as a natural byproduct. And if it doesn't, then it probably isn't, which is something that I think I've talked about in multiple live streams now at this point is that like kind of the proof is in the pudding. Like people show up and they're like, I've opened my third eye and my Dantian, and I have all this power and I have all this chi, but can you teach me how to heal my body? It's like, well, if your third eye was open, your Dantian was full and active, you wouldn't need to ask the question about this, and you wouldn't look the way that you look, and you wouldn't be in this environment, you wouldn't be in this context, you wouldn't be in this situation in any way, shape, or form in any reality if those things were true, but you are. So that means those things are probably not true, which it's like, if, which is kind of obvious because if I went to take piano lessons and I was like, "Hey, teacher, yeah, I can already play, Franz Liszt, most complicated piece. I can play Rachmaninoff and Chopin. Like, I can already do all that. Got it down, no problem, piece of cake." But I'm curious, what are the black keys? What's the difference between like the black keys and the white keys on the piano? I'm just curious. And if they're like, really, I don't think you can play all these songs. Oh, you think you're better than me? You don't know my level. You don't know what I've been doing with all these things. And I've been doing this for 30 years. It's like, well, I do because it's implicit in the question you just asked. Because if you could play a Rachmaninoff and Franz Liszt and Chopin and all this other stuff, you wouldn't show up and ask a piano teacher, what's the difference between the black and the white keys? Like you would be so far beyond that. And we can laugh and it's funny, but I literally have had that exact conversation with multiple people in the last few days. This dude being like, "Hey, yeah, can you tell me about Tai Chi for healing?" And I'm like, "Well, it doesn't matter if you want it doesn't matter really what you want. You have to go through the I Ching Jing process, and that the side effect of through that, the opening and the power that that creates is what heals the body." And he's like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't care about all that. I just need you to tell me what I should do because all I care about is healing." And I'm like, "Well, again, it doesn't matter what you want. You have to go through this process because the process has the effects you're looking for, regardless." And they're like, and I'm like, "It's about opening the channels and moving chi through those channels. Like that's about it." And they're like, "Oh, who the fuck are you? You don't know my experience of working with chi, prana, astral, etheric energy." Just listed all these adjectives and synonyms. And they're like, "You don't know my experience of working with those things and opening my channels and moving energy and creating and removing blockages." And I'm like, "Well, if you're so skilled in all those things, then why are you asking such a banal, absurd question about this thing and then rejecting the actual specific answer to it And if you had all of those things and could do all the things that you think you do, then you would have the healing and the power that you're looking for. And you wouldn't be in this position asking this absolutely trivial beginner question in the way in which you're doing it. But I'm the fucking asshole and the wrong jerk in the situation. So it's just another, it's just an example of what I'm talking about. And when I tell stories, when I give examples, sometimes I'm making them up hypothetically, but oftentimes it's just literal conversations that I've had or I've seen occur in people and things that I've also done at various points in my life through studying different things and having different teachers. And it's just, I would have thought at a certain point, a lot of the stuff would kind of just be common sense, would be a bit obvious. But maybe I am an idiot and my IQ is very low and I still have brain damage and I just don't understand these things. I don't understand why. Yeah. Anyways, I've already said what I needed to say in the live stream. Um, and I think it pretty well covered what I set out to cover in terms of motivation and gratitude and emotions and even clarity. And so hopefully that's been useful and beneficial. It's been about 56 minutes and there have been zero, zero chats, um, which kind of proves or shows me another thing that in addition to what I said earlier, where I made this Facebook post maybe like a few years ago where I said, if you speak in really emotional or fantastical imaginary terms, you will get a much larger, stronger response from people. But the more you dial down to clarity and definitions, here's what this is, here's what it means, here's what it does, here's what it's not, here's where it's wrong, here's where it's correct, here's the process of development, here's a couple of examples across a few different contexts of the principle in action. As soon as you step into that kind of framework, the engagement and the response basically goes way down and the hate tends to start going way up, which personally I find that to be interesting, funny, hilarious. And I don't say that just from my own experience. I can say that from looking at many other teachers across many different arenas, whether it's business or martial arts or whatever, these different things. And I think why that is probably many reasons, but a lot of it is just emotional stimulation and projection, just like political slogans. It has to be stimulating enough to be interesting, but poorly defined and vague enough for people to project into their own meaning. Because as soon as you start saying, no, this is what this means, then everyone's like, oh, you're mean, you're harsh, critical, you're rude, you're a know it all these different things. And it's like, well, no, it's just called mental clarity and specifically choosing A, B, C, D, D. So it's just funny. I joke to myself and I laugh at the just absolute absurdity of the context of of dealing with humans on a wider scale. Because, like I said earlier, if you talk about yourself and you talk about things through your own experience, you're self-absorbed, narcissist asshole who is trauma dumping or pain speaking or needs to process whatever. Or if you speak about things through other people, now you're an asshole, you're judgmental, you think you're better than everyone else, you're a know-it-all. You need to look in the mirror. Or if you just use like abstract data and science, that's just boring as fuck. If you use just classical text or religious text or philosophical text, now you get into arguing over, well, that's not what they really meant. That's not what it really means. And I think it's this, and I think it's that, and I read this, and I read that, and it becomes this whole other masturbatory scholarly thing. And then if you speak in just, like I said, imaginative, vague terminology, that's actually better because it allows people to just project and react. Why I say that is because I can look back at videos I used to make where I would genuinely be angry, genuinely be, just frustrated or angry and upset. And actually, the response to those videos was a lot better than what I do now. And the hate was a lot lower. And the people accusing me of being a dick or being a jerk or being angry was a lot lower, which is weird because I was actually those things in that time. But I think that's why people actually liked it, because they're like, oh, I'm angry. He's angry. I like this. Oh, he's frustrated. I'm frustrated. I like this. He's bitter. He's resentful. He feels isolated. Oh, I like this because it feels what I feel and I'm on board, even though I might not even hear or listen or understand or maybe even have the same experience that he has. But I at least can, it's at least similar enough that it like resonates my emotional experience, so I like it. And you can go back and look at videos like why I've been angry, sad, or something like I've been something. It was something I can't remember what it was called, but it was like 2015 or 16. It was one of the most popular videos I had at that time. It was just a 45-minute unhinged rant about my frustrations with dealing with the world and whatever. And it's like people are like, "Oh my god, this is amazing. This is the best video." Whereas nowadays, fast forward, I do a video that is about people's base desires being overstimulated through the media, and I use a a thumbnail of like a hot woman in a bikini, which stimulates people's base desires, which is the theme and the content of the video. And the video is specifically about that dynamic and how that occurs. And then what's the response? You're mean, you're an asshole, you're projecting, you're trauma dumping, you're pain speaking, da 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 da. And I'm like, well, no. I mean, I'm pretty calm, pretty neutral, almost to like a boring, boring monotone extent of neutral. So it's like, yeah, I don't know. So my point is that the absurdity of the whole thing and how in modern times we are empowered with an infinite amount of ways of tearing other people down while building ourselves up and while feeling completely justified in our activity to tear other people down. We have therapy, all the lens to judge and categorize and shit on people that we maybe don't even know. We have therapy or not therapy. Okay, we have therapy, and then we have like spirituality and religion, which gives us maybe some moral superiority or some kind of consciousness superiority, or maybe we close our eyes and vaguely numb ourselves out, and now we're meditating and we're spiritual, so that gives us a leg up. Or maybe we do plant medicines and psychedelics. Maybe we go to the gym and lift weights, and now we're buff, and everyone else is fat and gross and lazy, so we can judge them. Or we belong to a political party, or we subscribe to a conspiracy theory, or we subscribe to the mainstream news, or all these different categories and schemas that we are infinitely empowered with as human beings to just divide and tear other people down to any degree at which we don't agree with or don't want to tolerate or don't want to acknowledge or engage with. We can just tear it down. And that's on the negative side. On the positive side, we can bury our head in the sand and be like, no, I'm positive. I'm all love. I'm all acceptance. I love everyone. I don't judge, which is the same thing. It's just burying our head in the sand because we don't have maybe the internal strength and fabric to deal with uncomfortable parts of life. So we have to kind of resort to these coping mechanisms, these crutches, these casts, these training wheels or handlebars or handrails that society gives us. And that makes us feel kind of like empowered temporarily, but in actuality just divides us and low key undermines our self-respect and integrity over time, because those are not very like good actions. They're not really great ways of living as a human being. So it's just we're lifting ourselves up on the backs of other people while also kind of eroding our own self-respect and fabric. So that's another kind of reason too where people will write me emails of like crazy threats and crazy, degrees of personal attack and insult, threatening me, threatening my family, threatening my business, threatening people I work with, or insulting me to some capacity or whatever, right? And I look at it and I'm like, in their head, they think they're doing this grand gesture or grand act, or somehow putting me in my place or attacking me or shooting me down or something they think they're doing or accomplishing. But when I see it, I feel bad for them because I'm like, your behavior is inherently self defeating. The fact that you're doing this means I lose respect for you as a human, and it means I won't take what you say seriously. And I will say, you are the type of person that thinks it's okay to behave in this manner, which means you probably lack integrity and personal responsibility and morality and all these different things because you believe this behavior is fine and you probably do it regularly and it probably provides some positive reward. So that's not a basis of authority and respect by which anyone, any human with any fabric is going to take anyone seriously, which is a very different thing than being like, hey, maybe X, Y, and Z is incorrect, or maybe here's a better way to look at it, or, some other way of actually just addressing something directly. Like here's what you said, and actually there's a couple errors or pieces of logic that were off that led to this conclusion. And actually here's a different way of looking at it, or whatever other way of communicating that humans do that's based in respect and consideration and like actual conversation, actual authority and actual respect. But like an anonymous person on the internet personally attacking someone else, that's not a basis of authority and respect. Like authority and respect are qualities and things that are earned over time based on competency, based on status, based on mutual agreement, based on a number of different things. Not just because you're an anonymous person on the internet behind an anonymous screen name and you misinterpret something that emotionally makes you feel a certain way, and that the response that you believe to be appropriate is to somehow try to shoot down another person. To me, that's just an inherently self-defeating attitude, which automatically disqualifies most people with a brain from taking that person seriously. So it's like any way you look at it, it's a fool's errand and it's like a waste of everyone's time and energy. But when you look online, this is what people do. And it's not just me. I'm not just speaking from my own experience. I was watching a video earlier today about this guy that sells used cars. He like buys them cheap and repairs them, fixes them up, and then sells them. And he just talks about how dealing with the public, like, kind of ruined his soul. Like the amount of people scamming him, trying to take advantage of him, trying to shit on him, trying to waste his time, trying to attack him, doing all of these things. And I was like, yeah, this isn't unique to any genre or niche. It's just somehow there's this certain percentage of our population that thinks behaving in this way is okay or acceptable. And it seems like that's just par for the course. That's just the fabric that's built in. Um, but it was the same exact dynamics. I was watching the video and the guy's like demonstrating this process of this person trying to scam them. And the scam started with, "Hey man, I'm really so interested and I have all these questions and I'm so engaged." But then their questions are like kind of banal, pretty dumb, pretty monotonous, and just kind of off. So you're like, okay, and then they show up to buy the thing, and then they flip to flattery. "Oh man, you're so amazing. This car is just like you said it was, and I just appreciate how honest you are, and you're so incredible, and it's just so good to do business with you. And I'm going to be your biggest fan and your biggest supporter. I'm going to promote you to everyone." And it's like, "Mm, probably not." And then they get to the further part of the deal, and the guy starts lying and scamming and trying to take advantage of him and give him less money and give him fake, like, "Oh, I gave you $30,000. No, there's only 15 here. No, 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 I promise there's 30 there. No, I counted it as 15 here. Oh, I don't know how you're trying to scam me." And then like leveling accusation on the dealer. And then they count it 3 times in front of him. He's like, "Oh, wait, hold on. goes back to his car. Oh, wait, yeah, you were right. Here's the rest of the money. No, actually, now you're still short. Oh, well, can we put the rest on the credit card? Okay, sure, fine. Deal done, drives away. A week later, oh, all the money that was put on the credit card, now that's been disputed and charged back. Dealer calls the guy, hey, did you do chargeback? Oh, no, man, I would never do that. You're such an amazing, honest dealer, and I was so happy to deal with you. Like, I would never do that to you. And then in the end, the guy's like, "Look, man, I know you're lying. I know you did this." And the guy's like, "Oh, you fucking asshole. You piece of shit. You racist motherfucker. You think you're better than me. I'm sick and tired of white men treating me this way. And you're trying to take advantage of me. And my people have been getting scanned for so long. And you're a piece of shit." And da 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 da. And it just flipped on to this whole other crazy thing that had nothing to do with the deal. When in reality, the person was actually trying to scam and was a liar, and it was obvious through and through, and it was all actually on camera, and there was a paper trail. But that guy, the dealer, is now like an asshole. He's the evil perpetrator. So I watched it and I was just dying laughing because yesterday I was talking to another friend that sells things on Facebook Marketplace, and they were just talking about how it was like crushing them because the amount of people just absolutely trying to take advantage of them or rinse them or abuse them she was a female, so she was obviously had a safety element of like angry men knowing where she lives because it's like, oh, you fucking bitch, you tried to scam me, you wouldn't give me this $10 discount that I wanted, and I'm just a poor guy and I'm trying to do this and I was trying to help you and you think you're better than me, and just the same script that people do across the board that I've seen, at least on my own videos, 1,000 times over in emails, and I see other people's videos and other people's things, and I'm like, oh, this is just what people do. Like, whether you're a female, selling furniture secondhand or a car dealer or whatever, if you're dealing with the public in any capacity, it's just for whatever reason, people think this is an acceptable way to live and behave. And at least for me, and I was talking to this lady, her response is block, delete, done. Zero tolerance, zero engagement. As soon as they let out a fart that even remotely smells like that kind of behavior, they're done, they're gone, they're out. Period. End of story. Goodbye forever. We will not be speaking again. Done. And I can understand that's her attitude because she has to be, again, like worried about her safety because people know where she lives and she's a female, and like, angry guys making threats, like things of that nature. So it's like, yeah, that's the appropriate response. As soon as people are in any way exhibiting that kind of behavior, be done with it. So anyways, that was a bit of a tangent. I was just trying to talk about and make fun of kind of how people behave in this way, and they think it's gonna come across in a certain way, but the whole thing is just inherently self-defeating, and it just confuses me because I'm like, there's so many other ways in which you could be living your life right now. So many different things you could be doing, but you're choosing to do this, and you're choosing to do it repeatedly over time in many contexts and in many relationships with many people. But everyone else is somehow the asshole, and it's not. It's like, okay. Um, so yeah, anyways, this is longer than I thought it would be, which again is what I always say. Like every live stream, like, oh, I was planning to do 20 minutes, but it's 3 hours. Um, but yeah, the first whatever chunk of this, I think pretty thoroughly covered what I wanted to cover, which was motivation and gratitude and general attitude to things. And yeah, explain also a little bit as to why I say what I say and what I actually really believe and what actually really motivates me. Um, because people will be like, "Oh, you don't have empathy. You're not grateful." I'm like, "Well, I do. I just tend to translate that into direct action rather than just coming on the internet and crying or like, oh, look how grateful I am and I'm so blessed and blah blah." I'm just like, well, actually the best thing I could do out of respect to my teachers and myself and the lineage and whatever is just like put in hours a day every day, the best of my ability at that time, and I'll fall short and be inadequate and not be putting in enough, but at least I'm trying. And that's, I think, the best we can do as human beings based on our own inherent limited capacities and limited opportunities that we do have. Um, so yeah, hopefully that makes sense. Thanks for your kind words. Thanks for tuning in and watching. And more importantly, hopefully things can translate to actual action in the real world, not just like, oh, wow, that was cool. I really enjoyed it. Back to watching TV. It's like, well, come on, do something. And, eke out some degree of, if you need it, eke out some degree of motivation or purpose or find it or sort through these things and do something, because I don't really know of a kinder thing to do other than help people take better action, more efficient, effective action that will hopefully have a positive effect in their lives and in the lives of people around them, so that they themselves within themselves can be more empowered, more stable, more effective, more competent, and then be that kind of person in the world for other people wherever they might show up. Personally, I believe that that is a very useful endeavor. And I don't know that just telling people to coming on the internet, just telling people you're perfect, you're infinite, your heart chakra is beaming and it's open, and just drink celery juice every day and everything will be better. And if you have problems, just don't worry about it, because, you're perfect as you are, and you should just be calm and be in the moment and be really lethargic, and that will be magic, and that will be spiritual. Like all these kinds of things, it's not necessarily wrong or bad. It's just, what actual actions do they produce? What results, what fruits do they bear within the world? If I want to become more fit, and I think I'm going to become more fit by laying on the couch 20 hours to 21, 22, 23 hours a day, I'm lying to myself. But if I lay on the couch and I go to the gym or I go work out and be active for an hour or two a day, odds are I'll probably get more fit. And that's just cause and effect, action and results. It's not, or I think it's not that complicated, but apparently these are challenging ideas, because I'll have people write to me and be like, I love your videos, but sometimes it's just so negative and so challenging and so difficult. I'm like, okay, I mean, I acknowledge and validate your experience. I don't really understand it personally, but to me, if I was on the receiving end of this, I would be like, great, amazing. But maybe that's where I have it all wrong, because people have taught me in certain ways. So then I learned, oh, this is what I like. This is what works. This is like really beneficial. Um, like, I mean, I can give you an example of, I had a friend who, uh, was reconnecting with one of their exes, and their ex they hadn't talked to in, like, I don't know, 4 years. And right after they broke up, that ex had a child with another man and is still single, and I'm not sure where that other guy is. They have a kid and this whole other thing. They randomly meet each other 4 years later, start kind of hanging out again, and basically, you know, the connection, the sparks are there, right? So my friend is like, wow, like the connection's there, the sparks there. I really feel a lot for this woman. Like, we had all these times together and we had this connection. We really clicked, right? So that's the situation. That's the scenario. And the problem is, my friend is wondering, there's all this there. I feel all of these things. We click, da, 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 all these great things are there. Maybe I should just get with them. So that's the scenario. Now let's break it down. Let's look at it. So if we were just to be positive and nice and loving and kind and compassionate and all the modern whatever ideas, oh, that's awesome. I'm so happy for you. Oh, you feel great. You feel a connection. You feel these things for that person. Yeah, you should follow it. Oh, she likes you. Oh, you have fun together. Yeah, you should follow that. You should do that. Oh, don't worry about the fact that, you know, 2 months after you broke up, she had a kid with another man and is not with that man and he's not even in the picture and she's still single and she's moving around and she's transient. Like, don't worry about any of those things. Don't ask any of those questions. Don't read into any of those behaviors. Just go with your feelings, man. Listen to your emotions. Be positive. Be grateful for the loving opportunity that you have. Um, that's one way to look at it, which the outcome of that would probably be misery and conflict. 110%. Because my friend wants a family, but he wants his family. He doesn't want another man's kids. He wants his own kids. He wants his own family. He doesn't want to play, cleanup or be secondhand for anyone else. And a bunch of other qualities that he actually did not want in this person. So all of that positivity and naivety, let's say, would have absolutely led to misery, suffering, conflict, and maybe even another child that would be born into a conflict oriented, unhappy, unstable situation. And that would have been the consequence and the outcome of being positive. So you were trying to be positive, and now you harmed 3 people's lives, probably, maybe 4, and created a lot more conflict, a lot more suffering, a lot more discord in the world. So then they go through that experience and now they come out of it bitter, angry, hurt, resentful, frustrated. She's hating men, he's hating women, and everyone's bitter and upset and hurt and frustrated. And maybe now there's another kid born into a situation where they learn, oh, parents don't really love each other. Oh, being in a relationship is conflict. Oh, I don't respect men. Oh, women are crazy. They learn all of these things subconsciously because that's what they're raised in. So now you created another human being that goes out to the world with that degree of conflict. And then they get in a relationship with other human beings and create more conflict, all because you were wanting to be nice and kind and positive and you didn't want to be negative. You didn't want to deal with difficulty. You didn't want to have an uncomfortable, difficult situation. And you find videos like mine to be challenging or hard or heavy or mean or harsh or critical or judgmental or mean or whatever else. Or could go back and say what I said, which is, hey, man, the reality is you're actually just lonely and horny because I know you. I've known you for a period of time. And that's what's actually real within you right now. So the fact that you're meeting someone that you already had sexual chemistry with in the past is just bringing all of that and being like, oh, you're salivating because, a buffet is in front of you and you haven't eaten in a week. So you're salivating and you're confusing that as some other thing. So I said, here's what you do. Meet up with this woman at 10 a.m., jerk off before you go, clear that sexual desperation from your system, walk into that situation clear headed, see it for what it is, see the person in front of you, see the person that you are, look at the dynamic. And my friend said, as soon as they walked in, it was crystal clear. Oh, yeah, I was just lonely and horny. And this person is not a match in any way, shape, or form. And she's just hanging around orbiting because, he's like actually like a great, stable guy, good business, financially secure, all these things. She's just orbiting and hanging around thinking there might be some benefit for her and waiting for him to define and make the decision for what they're going to be. So he said he walked in and he was like crystal clear immediately. I had a great time because, they're friends. And he said, look, I think it's better off if we just let the past be the past and we just don't open these doors and like we just, remain friends and we just don't go down that romantic pathway. Fast forward now, he's married happily to a wife that he loves. She loves him and they have a very happy, harmonious relationship. And they're going to create a large, happy, harmonious family for themselves. So there's just gaming out. Being a dick or being mean or uncomfortable or negative or harsh for what, 10 seconds? Prevented years, decades, lifetimes of negativity, misery, suffering, conflict, drama, strife, stress, trials, tribulations, and led to a positive outcome that's going to create more positive outcomes. So when people are like, "Oh, you're so negative, man." I am negative because of situations like this. Because I'm so negative and I'm such a self-absorbed know-it-all asshole who hates myself and hates other people so much that I would rather people prevent and skip and miss out on all of this pain and suffering and misery and conflict and drama and trials and tribulations, and instead be led to what might be closer to what actually will be good for them and good for the world and be good for the people in their lives. That's how much of an asshole I am. That's how negative I am. That's how absolutely hateful and mean and small minded and sarcastic and everything. That's how it manifests out of that genuine mindset and desire for myself, first and foremost. Because I've experienced maybe not these exact situations, but I've experienced plenty of that degree of conflict and that degree of, I mean, even worse forms of conflict and violence and abuse and negativity and deceit and coercion and just out and out the the worst aspects of what humans can do to each other to varying degrees. So, because I'm such an asshole and I'm so mean, harsh, critical, judgmental, small-minded, negative, and it's so heavy and it's so difficult and it's so mean, that's why. And I could sit here for the rest of the day and keep going through examples from my own life and from the lives of people that I know and keep illustrating that principle and illustrating that concept. And I think I've mentioned this before. I had 3 girlfriends in a row where girlfriend 1, there was a dynamic that was occurring and it was dysfunctional. And I said, "We're both great people. We have a lot in common. It's clear we care about each other. But there's this dynamic that's occurring that is absolutely ruining that and creating all of this conflict between us and polluting the waters. These clear waters that used to be the love that flowed between us are now polluted with God knows what." But it's this dynamic. And then the response was, "You're an asshole. You're mean. Who are you to say that? You're a fucking toxic man. I'm a strong, independent, modern woman. I don't have to listen to you. Women have been listening to men for too long. Society is built upon men like you, and you've been oppressing women like me, and I don't have to listen to what you have to say anymore." Okay, I'm sad. That's unfortunate, but I guess we're done. Okay. And I'm thinking to myself, was I right? Was I? I don't know. Like, maybe she was right. Well, let me think about this. What was her next relationship within months of us breaking up? The exact dynamic that I had just described. 100%. Okay. So I saw that. I was like, maybe, maybe I'm on to something. I don't know. Maybe not. Okay. Fast forward to girlfriend two. Same situation. Here's the dynamic that I see that's occurring. Oh, you're negative. You're mean. Da, 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 all the things. I'm not going to keep repeating it because it's monotonous and repetitive. But same situation. So I said, okay, I guess we'll break up. Next situation. Her next exact relationship was the same exact dynamic that I described and ended for the exact reasons that I described. So I was like, And then I tried talking to her about it. She's like, "Yeah, I just don't want to hear anything from you." And I'm like, "Okay." I mean, I was really nice to you and kind and considerate, but okay. Okay, go fast forward to girlfriend 3. This one, they each got a little bit shorter because I kind of like learning curve got a little bit quicker. Girlfriend 3, same exact situation. Hey, I really like you. I think we have a lot of potential. You have these great qualities. I think this could have potential. But here's this dynamic that I see, and I really don't think this is going to work. And I don't think it's really making you happy because you're carrying all this anxiety as a result of this exact dynamic. Oh, boo hoo hoo, you're mean. Don't talk. How could dare you say this to me? Okay. 6 weeks later, in a relationship, that's exactly what I described to a T, and has spent, I don't know, 3 to 5 years yo-yoing in and out of that same exact relationship and dynamic. But I can't say anything about it because if I do, again, I'm wrong and I'm mean and I'm all these things, even though it's exactly what's occurring. Um, so it just kind of reiterates what I'm saying. And why I say these things is because it just occurs so many times. And these are women that uh, say I'm so mean and terrible because pointed out a certain dynamic that was causing the dysfunction. But the reason why I did that was because I cared and I wanted it to work. And I did not want them to perpetuate that misery for themselves that they were doing so. And in addition to them, I either gave them a business or I gave them a job or I improved their financial situation significantly or I massively improved their health or flat out cured them of multiple health problems that they had been dealing with for their entire life. I basically pointed them in so many different positive trajectories and directions. So demonstrated all of these what I personally believe to be loving and kind behaviors and actions. But somehow, because I point out a dynamic that is off or dysfunctional, I'm evil and I'm mean and I'm a toxic masculine man because I'm taking advantage of them and trying to oppress them. Even though literally one of the dynamics was, hey, you're trying to put yourself in this housewife kind of role which I did not ask of you and I'm not looking for. And more importantly, you don't want to do. You are building resentment for yourself for doing things that I don't want, that I did not ask for, and are not the reasons why I was attracted to you. But you're putting yourself in this situation and kind of like flagellating yourself when I'm telling you not to do it. I'm financially literally giving you incentive to do other things. I'm giving you a lifestyle to do really literally whatever you want, but you're forcing yourself into trying to be some kind of housewife and you're resenting me for it and yourself for it and polluting the dynamic and killing the romance and killing the connection when no one wants it. But I'm the bad guy in that scenario. I'm an asshole because I ended it because of that thing. Even though I spent months trying to be like, hey, this is a scenario. Not only did I spend months, but I spent money. I sacrificed my own money, the fruits of decades of my own work, sacrifice, and dedication were benefited to someone that didn't invest that time and energy and that dedication. But I'm the bad guy in the scenario because I'm being negative. When in actuality, I'm actually trying to solve a problem so that we can get back to loving each other and having harmony. So it's just time and time again, I think there's this human response where we want to avoid want to avoid 5 minutes or 90 seconds of discomfort. And instead we'd rather experience decades or lifetimes of misery. And I could keep going with even historical examples of this, like Chernobyl and many other tragedies that occurred in life because someone didn't want to have an uncomfortable conversation, wanted to bury their head in the sand and be positive and have good vibes. Which it's like, cool, there's a time and a place for that. And, the bulk of your life, yeah, should be, yeah, good vibes and doing whatever. But doing that all the time at the exclusion of other natural faculties of your organism, that I wouldn't classify that as intelligence. I would call that kind of the opposite. Um, so that's what I mean. So again, I guess that's four stories illustrating what I mean. I could, again, keep going all day, even though I don't want to, because my throat is getting dry. But you asked, what is the dynamic? That's one of the dynamics. Um, another one was like anxiously wanting to use a man for another benefit, another example of like financial gain and benefit, but based on like, okay, I'm now in this age, and now we have to do this, and now we have to do that, and now we have to do this, and now we have to do that, and I'm like, well, what about who we are actually as people? I think this anxiety induced agenda is going to prevent you from accurately seeing the dynamic that's in front of you as it is, because you're consumed with it over here, trying to create this hypothetical outcome that it removes you from what's in front of you, which is what's in front of you is the thing that will actually lead to the hypothetical outcome. But by being obsessed with the hypothetical outcome, you're missing the thing that's in front of you, which I thought would be problematic and typically is problematic, and actually is problematic because 8 years later, this woman has still not manifested the outcome that she said she wanted to manifest, but then said she didn't, but then said she wasn't sure, but then said she might, but then said she didn't, said she wasn't sure, but then definitely does, but then she's not sure. So I'm like, wait, you have this anxiety induced agenda that you want, but then also tomorrow you're not sure if you want it and it doesn't matter, but then you absolutely have to have it. And I'm just like, okay, so you don't really know. So then it's not really fair to take someone else and pull someone else into this just because of your instability. That just doesn't register to me as loving, considerate, or fair, or kind in any way, shape, or form. Seems like the opposite. It seems selfish and self absorbed and kind of manipulative and coercive to rope someone into exclusively your own benefit and your aim. But somehow I'm mean because I point that out and say that maybe that's not the best outcome for a loving romantic relationship. So that's one of the other dynamics that I was like, hey, this is what's occurring. And maybe it's not the best outcome. And then, 3, 5, 7, 8 years later, everything I said was true, still is true, and has proven itself to be true over the course of time. So then I can look back and be like, well, I guess maybe I was in the right ballpark. I mean, obviously not 100% completely accurately true in all such situations, in all circumstances, at all times, but at least in a functional, workable ballpark. And I think as humans, a lot of times that's the best we can do. And if we're searching for, I need something that's absolutely true, absolutely under all conditions in all situations across all times. And I don't know if there's that many things that are really like that. But what happens is, and this literally happened yesterday, I post this thing and someone was like, oh, I disagree with it. Oh, well, why? Because hypothetically speaking, in this imaginary situation, under these imaginary conditions, it's not true. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's cool, but those are hypothetical imaginary conditions, and we don't actually live in that world. And I'm not claiming that what I'm saying is 100% completely true all of the time. I'm saying that in general, there are certain trends and dynamics which exist in the world that maybe, like a bell curve. Sure, the middle of the bell curve isn't absolutely true across all manners, but it still is the bulk of the bell curve. And it's kind of useful to know what that is and to understand it and know where we are on it or know what it is in a situation, personally speaking. But then, of course, what I realized is it's pivoting or it's deflecting or it's undermining. That's basically, in essence, what people do when they encounter something that is uncomfortable or they don't like. It's not that it's not actually true, it's that I need to deflect it or attack them or pivot it to something hypothetical or removed from what's actually said, so that over here I can't compete, but over here I can move it and shift it and then kind of argue this hypothetical thing that doesn't actually really exist and is not actually related to what they're saying. But over here, under these conditions, now I can kind of like remove the conversation from over here. And I can't tell you how often that that is a thing. And it's something that we all do for whatever reason. It's this inherent defense thing that we have, whether it's encountering advice that would actually really help us, or the solution to our actual problem, or something we actually need to do. It's just this weird thing. I don't know what it is. It's very obvious, especially in the health world. People are like, "Oh, can you help me? I need to solve this thing." Yeah, here, do this. No, no. Okay, well then why are you here? Oh, because I want to fix it and solve this thing. Okay, well then do this and it will solve it. No, it won't solve it. Oh, but it solved it for all these other people, and you're not special. You're not that unique. Like it, this is what it does. No, it's not going to work. Okay, then why are you here? Oh, I'm here because I want to solve this thing. Okay, well then do this. Oh no, that's not going to work. Because I'm like, well, no, it did and it has and it will, and this is the thing. Oh no, it's not. I'm just like, okay. Uh, Not sure exactly what else to do here then. So yeah, that was more stories, that was more dynamics, and hopefully it kind of illustrates the point. And I'm gonna repeat myself again. Oh, it's too long. Didn't mean to be down here this long, and it's true. I really don't. So if there are no other questions, then I for sure need to go be done with this and cook a lunch and actually breakfast. I need to eat. I need to drink some water because somehow drinking a latte and then talking for 2 hours straight kind of dries out your throat. Who would have thought? And I wasn't smart enough to put some water over here. So, anyways, thanks again for tuning in. Thanks for watching the old live stream and for enduring my absolute hostility and narcissistic, self absorbed, hate induced, toxic, misogynist masculinity. And, I'm just perpetuating oppression because men like me have just been in power and dominating people for so long. And I'm just spewing my vitriol on the internet because I'm I'm a armchair philosopher spewing hyperbole and conjecture. Um, and I'm a hipster dipshit with stupid hipster glasses. I actually just quoted a verbatim hateful comments from the last however many years. Um, so it's pretty funny. But I would say overarching a lot of the time, yeah. Anyways, I'm going to leave it there. I'm not going to continue on my trauma dumping, pain speaking, uh, toxic masculinity. I'm just going to go out and be fit, do my toxic masculinity fitness and get strong and competent. And my cis hetero male privilege, I'm going to go stand up when I urinate because I'm a cis hetero male privilege. And I'm going to walk down the street and people are going to bow at my feet because I'm a cis hetero white man. And that's just how the world works. And the only reason people were tuning into this video on this live stream is because I'm a cis hetero white man. I don't know if you knew that, but that's the truth. And you might think I'm being a dick, but I've had women literally tell me that. Oh, the only reason you were successful is because you're a cis hetero white man. And I was like, huh. Here I was. I thought it was because I don't know, sacrificed and dedicated and did things. But I guess that's all I had to do was just do things. All I had to do was just do things that I didn't actually have to do anything to earn. So you're telling me the most important, valuable, impactful qualities of me are the things that I had no choice over and did nothing to earn, that I just completely inherited from my family. That's the most important, unique, impactful characteristics of my nature. Oh, not my character isn't important? Oh, Wait, but I thought we were supposed to judge people on the content of their character, but you're saying I should judge people based on the color of their skin and their gender and their sexual identity. That's what you're telling me. And you might think I'm being hyperbolic, but this is word for word a conversation I've had with at least 12 different women in Portland. And they're like, "Yes, exactly, you get it." And I'm like, "But I thought that was what we weren't doing." They're like, "Well, no, it's different now because we have to do these things now to restore equality and balance." And I was like, "So you have to have prejudice and bigotry because you want to get rid of prejudice and bigotry because you imagine in a scenario in which your trust fund lifestyle was oppressed by men in the past, even though everything you're doing is because of men." Which actually, this reminds me of, because someone asked, "What is the dynamic that you speak of?" This, what I'm talking about, was one of them. It was a female who would lecture me about, "I don't need a man. I don't need a man. Men are toxic. Men are useless. And I'm happy to live in a world where I don't need a man and I'm so strong and independent." And I'm like, "Cool, then why are you trying to get me to financially support you? Why do you want to move in with me for free?" Uh, because at that time I lived in a 4,000 square foot house by myself. Like, by myself. And this lady's like, "Oh, well, just let me move in. Like, you don't need all that space for yourself." And I was like, "Cool, are you going to pay half the rent?" "Okay, well, you're not going to move in." Okay, but this is a female who says all of these things, but was completely 100% financially supported by her dad, completely and utterly. So in the same breath as me using my parents' credit card, my parents pay all my bills and let me travel the world and have this luxury lifestyle, and I grew up in a mansion. Men are also pieces of shit and useless and depressive, even though even though the guy literally created the position for her to be in saying those things, and she's looking to me to financially support her, but she doesn't need a man. And I remember just looking and being like, "Is this a hidden camera show? Is this a prank?" And then I remember I'll tell you, the absolute last straw of that particular relationship was within the same 24-hour period. This lady was ranting about, society's objectifying women, and, men say these mean things to women, and there's these harsh beauty standards and all these kinds of things. I was like, "Yeah, I can see that. I agree. I think that would be kind of a clusterfuck to have to deal with, like all these double standards and beauty standards." Da, 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 da. I'm like, "Yeah, for sure. I'm on board. I could see that." But then the next day, she tells me about how her and her friends were basically laughing at, like, something they saw online about this guy with a micro penis, which I get. It is kind of funny. It's tragic. It's horrible. Feel absolutely bad for that person. But they were just kind of belittling and insulting and laughing at him in not a good humored kind of way, in a very, like, I don't know the right word, but a very derogatory, dark, malicious kind of way, as a group of females. And I was thinking, like, "Wait, weren't yesterday you were saying how you were against men, belittling and saying these harsh, mean things about women's bodies?" She was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "But wait, but you and your friends are doing the exact same thing to a guy about something that was something he was born with that he didn't choose and can't do anything about." And she's like, "Yeah, but that's different." And I was like, "Is it?" I'm like, "I'm not saying there's not maybe some tragic humor in it. That's not the thing. But the way you guys are going about it, and the veracity of it, and the frothing at the mouth of it is like," but that combined with I don't need no man and I'm financially independent, even though the guy, her dad supports everything. I'm like, and then on top of I'm mean because I'm said this dynamic is occurring and it's dysfunctional. And I was like, okay, dude, this is too much insanity for me to fucking deal with. Like, I gotta go. Like, we're done. But that was the icing on the cake. And I can tell you what made me think of it is the exact person who was telling me that the only reason I was remotely even successful in business was because I was a cis hetero white male, was also a trust fund baby, meaning like their dad was rich and wealthy and funded them to travel and go all over the world and study internationally and study abroad and get full ride to like prestigious colleges where they learned all this stuff. And I was like, wait, so I really, as a personal level, I really struggle with that degree of contradiction and hypocrisy and moral bankruptcy. I find it bothersome, like full stop. It's really weird. It's really strange to me. Um, but as I look at history and look out through time, it's not a new phenomena. I mean, that same mechanism is how people are able to commit atrocities, whether it's Nazis in Germany or what the Russians were doing at the same time, or what the Japanese were doing during World War II, or what the Chinese were doing World War II, or what myriad of other power systems are doing right now to this day. They're all doing it in their mind for a good reason, for a good cause, for everyone's benefit, which is like the absolute pinnacle expression of just absolute insanity, or I don't even know what the word is for it. But it's just like, wait, so we have to like kill everyone to make the world more equal? Like Cultural Revolution in China, they're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. So we have to kill all these people, and then that will make everything better and more equal in our society. So you have to take all the money from all the business people and get rid of it from them for the greater good, but then all the money just gets concentrated into the hands of the ruling elite class. But that's going to make everything more equal. They're like, yeah, exactly, you get it. And I'm like, or maybe it's just a power grab between rival gangs, and whatever rival gang has this methodology to derive power and resources from this rival gang, and somehow they dupe everyone in the middle to be like, oh, this is for my own good, this is for equality. Oh wait, massive famine ensues and like 100 million people die. People get tortured in the most barbaric, horrible ways. People are getting killed, like Cambodia. They're killing so many people that they just ran out of bullets and ran out of ways to kill people, which I won't get into the specifics because it's absolutely awful. But the fact of the matter is, it was for the greater good. It was for to make society more just and more equal, and to save the people and restore balance. And it was for all of these noble aims and noble efforts. It's like, cool, you got to murder 30% of your 40% of your population in 5 years, and that's making everything more equal and more valid. And but that's what communism is? Okay, cool. But then fast forward to modern time, we have all these feminists and like super left-leaning people, like I've just talked about all these examples, who are saying the same exact thing. Oh, the way in which we're going to get rid of prejudice and bigotry is by being prejudiced and bigoted. Oh, but it's different and it's okay because we have identified this group of people as the perpetrators and we're the victims. So it's okay that we enact bigotry and prejudice and bias and hatred towards them because it's okay, because they're the bad guys. Oh, but you're going to get rid of your perceived or imagined or maybe real prejudice by being prejudiced against them? Yeah. Oh, so doing the thing that you're against is how you're going to get rid of the thing you're against. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you get it. So then to wrap it up and conclude it, People will often ask and say, why do you care about this? Who cares? Who cares about these weird history things? It's over. It doesn't matter. You weren't there. Who cares? Oh, these weird feminist ideas are occurring and people are behaving in this way. Okay, well, just don't date them. It doesn't matter. Who cares? Uh, you're pointing out these kinds of dynamics within spirituality or new age or self-help or spiritual worlds. Like, who cares? Don't be negative. Like they're trying their best. They're, working for the greater good, and don't be negative. Don't be mean. Who cares what you think? Just be positive. If you don't have anything nice to say, then don't say anything at all. Then keep your mouth shut. Da, da, da. Who cares, right? Who cares is actions have consequences. And why do you not care? That's my question when I hear these things. It's like, really? Why do you not care? Why are you complicit and completely comfortable and okay with this dysfunction that will breed more dysfunction, which will harm people and will probably harm you, but it's not harming you right now? Or maybe you have the ability to avoid it or escape it or reject it or deny it or pretend it doesn't exist. Cool. That doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It doesn't mean it's not a problem. It doesn't mean it's not going to produce negative results down the road. But yeah, I'm a jerk. Who cares? I should just not worry about it, right? Just be happy. Just, listen to Bob Marley and whistles happy songs and smoke weed, and who cares? You know? So I'm thinking, well, if everyone takes on that attitude, then ultimately, right, who cares? Because actions produce consequences, and we have to live with the consequences that are produced by those actions. It's not rocket science. Actually, I should look into rocket science and be like, is it even that difficult? Is it really even that hard? It's like it's the pinnacle example of like difficulty and complexity. But I wonder if it really is. I mean, I'm sure it is, obviously. But I should study it. That way I can be a dick and be like, well, actually, rocket science is not rocket science in the way in which people commonly understand it. It's a complicated interrelationship of physics and mathematics, along with planetary dynamics and gravitational fields and forces and rocket jet fuel propulsion theoretical theorems, which were originally contracted by this guy. And then it was constantly debated that whether or not this theorem was absolutely correct until this guy came. Like, I should just start doing that just to really annoy people, who'd be like, "Oh, it's not rocket science," and I'd be like, "Well," um, my point is, we are social animals. We are tribal. We live in tribes. We live in a society. We live in a culture. These things affect us whether we like it or not. We are a group. It's kind of like 100 monkey sort of syndrome phenomena, but positive or negative. So these dynamics, these trends are in us to varying degrees. They show up in us. And my idea is that I live my life within the context of, I guess, spirituality, self help, self improvement, things of that nature. So the goals and the definitions of those things are self improving, helping myself, becoming healthier, becoming stronger. So, based on that context and based on the goals of those contexts, means that I'll probably have to identify the dynamics within myself that are preventing those results from appearing, which means I might have to look at those dynamics. And if they exist in me, they for sure exist in other people. If they exist in other people, they probably exist in me. If they're massively widespread socially, probably is affecting me to some capacity. So if I want the goals and I want the outcomes, and these are certain things that are standing in the way or are contradictory to those goals, then you have to overcome those things, or at least adapt to, or whatever the context is, to achieve those things. Right? I mean, I thought that was just how things worked. So then I'm confused when it's mean or negative or irrelevant, or who cares? Why do you care about it? Don't worry about it. Don't think about it. Live your life. Be positive. Focus on the good. Da, 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 which, of course, yes, all those things is absolutely true. But then at what point are you just not growing? Are you not developing? Are you stagnant? Are you stuck? Are you unmotivated? Are you ungrateful? And I realized most people beyond their immediate, myself included, most of us as humans, beyond our immediate instant gratification and comfort level, we really don't care about much. Like, my honest opinion is that if there are world leaders doing these geopolitical agendas and things to manipulate and shift and change and control whatever, and they're trying to do it covertly or push it through, honestly, I think that's kind of dumb. And it makes me think they're not that bright because in reality, I think the vast majority of people, at least in America, if you were just like, look, guys, here's $10,000. Here's a voucher for like unlimited Popeyes chicken for the next 10 years. You guys enjoy that stuff. By the way, here's like here's a microchip and a social credit score and a one world government and a central bank digital currency, and like we're going to confiscate your petrol engine or your gas engine cars, and like you're going to live in a totally like totalitarian authoritarian surveillance state, but it's for the greater good and it's for like saving the planet and restoring equality and it's for diversity and inclusion. So we're gonna do all this, guys. Like, here's $10,000. Here's like an unlimited fried chicken, like Popeyes card, and like here's a unlimited monthly pass to Regal theaters. I think honestly, the vast majority of people would be like, okay, yeah, that's cool, sounds good. Like, that's great. You guys do what you got to do. Let me know when I gotta renew my microchip or when you're gonna download the latest software to whatever. Like, it's cool. You guys do what you're gonna do. And yeah, thanks. Like, just keep the entertainment going, keep the fried chicken going, and like we're good to go. I, I think honestly, that's really all it would take. So then sometimes when people are like, "Oh, but the elites are trying to push these agendas and doing all these things," and I'm like, "Are they really? If they were really that smart, how can they not know that people, most of us, function at that level, and that's really all it would take? And why why do all this complicated other things when they could just do that and then achieve the same goal in a much quicker, easier, more direct way? And people will be stoked about it. Like, what? I get unlimited fried chicken? I get $10,000? I get unlimited like Regal movie passes? Like, dude, sign me. Oh, okay, cool. I mean, all that freedom, all those rights, all that whatever. I wasn't really using that shit anyways. I don't really need it. I'm just concerned about like giving my TV, giving my food, fulfill my basic instant gratification right now. And like, I don't really care what you guys are up to because who cares, right? If I need to feel good about myself, I'll just do a little bit of Eckhart Tolle, every now and again. If I really need to feel good about myself, I'll just blast myself open with some fucking plant medicine, some drugs, which ironically enough, I guarantee you there's going to be a whole host of happy pills and smart drugs that are going to be derived from that are going to come out from pharmaceutical companies that will be derived from plant medicines. And because people are primed and habituated and getting all salivating towards plant medicines, they're going to absolutely do what happened with COVID, where you had all these like anti-establishment, anti-big pharma people that automatically overnight flipped to pro-establishment, pro-big pharma, pro-exploitation. You're going to have all these like counterculture hippies and all these people being like, oh, there's pharmaceutical happy drugs from plant medicines sold. That's really where it's going. How do I know that? Because for years, I've been trying to present conversations and information like this, and no one gives a fuck. No one wants to hear it. They're not interested. Why? Because it's a little bit uncomfortable right now in the moment. Just like the example I gave earlier with my friend in the dating scenario. Basically, mostly everyone I would imagine would be on board with this side of the example that I gave. And the fact that the other side, if I just produced it as an example, most people would be like, you're a know-it-all, you're mean, it's not your right, it's not your place, you're a jerk, you're harsh, you're critical, you're judgmental. They say all these things. But then, okay, let's look at the outcomes. Let's look at the manifestations. Let's look at what actually occurs in reality. Oh no, there's no need for that. There's no time for that. Who cares about that? I got my immediate instant gratification, or I avoided temporary discomfort. So who really gives a flying shit about the rest of it? So I think on the whole, in large, that's kind of how things go, which would lead us to the next thing, which is, oh, that's cynicism. You're cynical. You're pessimistic. Which I would say, no, I would be genuinely optimistic if there were genuinely lots of optimistic things to be for, or to be optimistic for, which I am in different contexts, because there are things to be optimistic about. Um, but at a certain point, if you look at a situation as it is, it might not be that great. And if you're honest about that, then that might appear as cynicism. But it's like, just call it like it is. If it changes, then sure, I'll change my tune. But it just reminds me, what, as an example of this exact thing in the business world, I can't tell you how many freelancers, how many marketers, how many marketing agencies, how many professionals that I would speak to and be like, oh, yeah, we're going to kill it. We're going to crush it. We're going to do these great things. We're going to achieve all these goals. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. It's going to be amazing. You're going to love it. And I'll say, well, how? Oh, we're going to do this. Yeah, but what does that mean? Oh, it means just it just means we're going to do fill in the blank, generic, vague term. Yeah, but what does that look like? What does that actually mean? How are you actually going to do that? Oh, well, uh, we don't know. But the thing is, like, this is gonna be awesome. You're gonna love it, right? And I'm like, cool. I'll be optimistic. I'll be hopeful. In which point you show me a dynamic to be optimistic and hopeful about, that is like clear cause and effect relationships based in clear reasoning and rationale, then I will be optimistic. But if you just say a bunch of empty things because it feels good in the moment, then I'm not going to be on board with that. And I can tell you how I know this to be true is that I tried for a period of my life to live over in that be nice, be optimistic, be kind, be open, all those generic sort of phrases. I gave that a whirl, and it cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars. It cost me probably probably more than that, to be honest. Probably cost like $1 million if you really add it all up. Years of stress, years of turmoil, bad relationships, failure, because people told me, "Oh, you're mean, you're negative." So I said, "Oh, they must be right." So then I listened and I did it their way, and then it failed miserably. I lost a lot of money. I was very stressed, very unhealthy, very unhappy. And then when I actually said, well, hmm, went back to, well, let me just do it for myself. Let me do it the way I think it should. What do you know? Things start working better. My health improves. I feel better. I'm not angry, not so angry. My emotions are better. My everything is more stable. My relationships are better. I'm not burning money and fucking getting taken advantage of and getting hosed by people spinning yarns. Hmm. Okay. So based on the results, it seems like this attitude over time is producing better results, which is what the word better would mean, and the word successful or useful or practical would mean. So that makes more sense to go in that direction rather than the other direction, which is I look at that and then I look at the people doing that and believing that, and they're really not doing very much, or they're just spinning. So then what I realized was, oh, it's just misery loves company. And I can tell you another great example of this where I was at an event and I was having lunch, and there was a group of us all hanging out, and there was a group of these women that were like, "Oh, do you want kids? Have you ever thought about having kids?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm not against it, but I've never, really been super into the idea. But if I meet someone and we fall in love and it's a great thing, and then yeah, of course, you know, bringing another life into the world out of the context of love and connection, sure, absolutely. And they interpret that as me kind of shitting on it a little bit. They're like, "Oh no, just wait, just you'll see. You really are gonna want kids. Like you really should have kids, and you really should do this." And I'm thinking to myself, "You're all fucking miserable, stressed, depleted, anxious, angry, depressed, overworked, overrun, complaining, poor health, resent their husband, resent their kids, resent their family." And I'm thinking like, you're not actually a good example of any of these things, but you think I'm going to look at you and be like, "Yeah, I should do that." So then what I realized is it was just misery wants company or misery loves company. And then I was like, "No, no, I'm not I'm not signing up for what you I'm not buying what you're selling." Because I look at you and you're all of the things that I just listed. And this is what you say when I see you and when I hear you in conversation with other people. And it's how you describe your situation at home. So I'm like, nothing about that is appealing or like, yeah, 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 I want that. But it's like, no, people just like, I guess want that. Everyone, no, no, join my club. I'm like, well, if your club was amazing and it was producing awesome results and your relationship was harmonious and you're genuinely enjoying and loving your life, then yeah, I'd be like, sweet. That looks like a great family dynamic that I would want to create for myself too. So it's just another example of that kind of scenario. And it's just that sort of attitude. Whereas, um, yeah, I kind of lost the thread on what I was even saying. Have you heard of EFT? Yeah, I have. It's just sort of just tapping on whatever, like acupressure points, tapping on it, and sometimes they use affirmations or whatever. Um, yeah, I mean, if it works for people, cool. Um, but it's not something I really have ever gotten into or whatever. But yeah, if it helps people and it works, then great. Because it's obviously there's not really a lot of risk or negative side effects of doing it. So it's like a lot of upside. And the thing is, too, is like at a practical level, if people are genuinely in pain or they genuinely have something to do, then yeah, do whatever works, do whatever helps. I really don't give a shit about it. And in that capacity, like do what you got to do. Because one thing that I noticed as an example of this, as someone being in the holistic and alternative field for whatever 20 years, people will assume that I'm like anti pharmaceutical. I'm anti all drugs. I'm anti mainstream medicine. But that's not actually true. I'm more so just practically oriented to what's the best option in the situation. Sometimes a situation is just two bad options. Sometimes a situation is bad and you have to make a bad decision and a bad choice to get out of the bad situation. That's just real life pragmatism. That's not, there's ideals and there's like actually how life is. And I just say that because I notice people are on extremes. People really into the mainstream regular world are like, oh, everything alternative is crap, which to be fair, a lot of alternative stuff is genuinely crap. But then on the flip side, people that go full alternative are like, oh, everything from the mainstream is terrible and it's profit and it's going to poison you and people are dumb and exploitive and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, there is actually a lot of that, yes, but not all of it. So I think either extreme is not really that appropriate. But people would assume, oh, you're in this field, so you must have this kind of belief system. And it's like, no, I just really more so what's the best tool for the job? What's the most appropriate thing, the most useful and effective thing for whatever the situation is? And then go off of that. Don't just have some kind of rigid, you know, idea. But I just noticed that from being in the field for so long. So anyway, yeah, anyways, I'm doing this again. Like, yep. Okay, I'm gonna drop off here. Thanks again for tuning in. I do genuinely appreciate it, and hopefully it's been enjoyable. And hopefully you enjoy the rest of your day wherever you find yourself on the planet. I think it is pretty wild. I think as much as I as much as the internet and social media and people at large present a lot of annoying bullshit, on the same token, the internet and social media and people at large present a lot of opportunity to genuinely connect with really cool people all over the planet that you might otherwise have never have met, which is amazing. And I guess it's not something I talk about very much, but it's definitely something that is continually surprising and continually blows my mind. Even though, I've been doing it for 13, 14, 15 years, it's still like pretty wild to think about. Um, was I at a bar on Tuesday night? No, I actually don't go to bars. Uh, Turia, three natural states. I mean, do you live in Portland? Does Turia, three natural states, live in Portland? I guess is my question. So I don't live in San Francisco. So then I definitely was not at a bar in San Francisco on Tuesday night because I actually don't even live in Portland. I live outside of Portland. So yeah, it definitely wasn't me. But I guess I have a very common a common look. It's not awkward at all. It just makes me laugh because what it reminded me of is when I used to go out to eat a lot. I would go to multiple restaurants I would go to, and they'd be like, "Really, you're back again?" And I'm like, "What the fuck are you talking about, dude? I just got here. Like, I just walked in as a customer to order lunch, and you're like, whoa, you're back already?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" So they're like, "Oh, I swear you were just in here." I was like, "No, it's my first time ever being here, or my first time ever at this location." And they're like, "No, I swear you were just here." And I'm like, "Well, I'm not. So can I order now?" Um, so then I always was like, "Man, I don't get it. I don't get what they're talking about." And then one day I was walking down the street uh, on the sidewalk. I was going this way, and there's a person coming the other way, and I looked over, and I was like, "Is that me?" I'm like, "Is this some kind of mirror parallel reality shit going on right now?" So I'm like trying to do things and see if they do it, if they do it too, and they're looking at me like, so I was just like, "Okay, don't look, just fucking keep walking." And then I thought, "Oh, maybe that's who they saw." Like, maybe me and this other guy that looks just like me are somehow in this parallel entrainment residence where we're living a similar life, but never actually really intersecting. We go to the same places at around the same time. And I'm just like, do my parents have another kid and just not know about it? Um, so yeah, that was kind of funny. So that's why when you said that, it made me laugh. And then also, I just started telling people towards the end, just to fuck with people, I'd be like, "No, I'm just a generic white guy with beard and glasses, and everyone looks like me." I think when I was in kind of a bad mood one day, I said that to one of the ladies, and she was like, "Oh, no, 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 that's not what I meant. That's not what I meant." I was like, "I know, I'm just fucking with you." Uh, but also, yeah, kind of. There is some truth to that. Uh, so it's funny. It is humorous to me. Side question. Okay, what's the side question then? Have I read Damo's book? No, actually, I don't think I have. I mean, I have it. I think I've skimmed it, but I don't think I've ever actually read them. Why? Oh, you must have read. Oh, it's not a question, it's a statement. Um, yeah, I mean, the book's cool, but it's just the book. Um, You need in-person tutelage. If you're in San Francisco, there's teachers that teach in the Bay Area. There's a group in the Bay Area. I would recommend putting a book away and studying with a teacher in person, because it's very different. And what's in the book is just what's in the book. Um, there's different levels of teaching as well. There's public, there's general, and then there's private, in person, and then there's even other gradations of that. But yeah, it's a great book. I'm sure. I haven't read a book in probably like 6 years or something. I mean, yeah, it's the map and the territory, kind of, but it's also just literally different practices and different processes and different teachings. It's not just like semantics or symbolism or things of that nature. It's literally different things, which is why you need a teacher in person and need in person tutelage over many years to actually make progress. Because mostly what people do, from what I've noticed and what I did early on, is I went in with my own expectations, my own past experience, and all the things that I thought I did that were good and cool and correct, and I thought I knew. And all of those things were actually preventing me from doing what he was actually teaching. So I had about a 3 to 4 year period where I was just kind of banging my head against the wall and it's not really progressing because of all of that stuff. And then when I eventually just was like, you know what? Delete, recycle bin, done. Um, so I think that's what people absolutely need to do. And over, doing this for 10 years and seeing people in the group and also teaching people, I think this really holds people back. Um, I think people really absolutely need to make a decision about their, and I don't mean this just you, I'm saying in general, I'm sharing advice that which helped me, and that when I look at people and when I have taught, I've seen what has held people back. I mean, I've seen people that have been training for as long as I have, and they've made literally no progress. They're doing what they were doing 10 years ago, and they're asking the same questions they were doing 10 years ago, or they're just using the practice to prop up what they were already doing, which then begs the question of why are people even doing it in the first place? It's this weird thing where people walk in with all of their past experience, and it's like, well, why? Why waste all this time and energy and effort to learn something new when you're not actually going to learn it because you can't actually do it because you're still doing all the stuff that you're carrying into it and you're hanging on to it and reinforcing it. So it's just getting worse and stronger, and you're getting less and you're getting more far away from what's actually being taught and what the actual real thing is. And again, I say this from my own personal experience. I did that and it held me back. And I can tell the difference when I shifted my approach and my mindset, my progress and my understanding went way up. And for people that I know, they've done the same thing. And teachers have said the exact same thing numerous times. So, based on all of those criteria, I assume and feel as though it is quite a useful thing. But it just, again, it confuses me about what people are actually their intentions are. So, yeah. Anyways, that's that thread. So is the gist of Neigong essentially just reconditioning the Huang through gravity and Song Ting mobilizing Qi? No, it's not. That is not the gist of Neigong. So it's a part of it, but it's one of those things where when you do it and you go through it, it answers all of the questions. Like to illustrate what I mean, I haven't really had a question about the training in like 4 or 5 years. Just haven't had any. Like pretty much none. not because I'm in anything, it's because of the shift in mindset that I talked about. Because once I actually engaged with it and started doing it, and once I actually listened to what was being taught, not what I thought and how it related to what else I learned and doing pattern recognition of, oh, it reminds me of this, it reminds me of that, it sounds like this, it sounds like that. The gist is this, the gist is that, the map is this, the map is that. Oh, it's like this, oh, it's like that. All this correlation, corollary stuff. Once I stopped doing it, then I actually was like, let me try to actually listen to what he is saying and what he means and what that actually is and what that actually refers to. And then the more I engage with that, is the more all the questions pretty much answered themselves and just went away pretty much almost entirely. So a lot of the reason why people ask questions and do things is because they're not actually in it. They're not actually doing it. And they're up here, or they're doing something else. They're like, I'm doing my X, Y, and Z 12 other practices, and now I'm just going to add this little thing on as the side. But then how does this little thing that I'm doing here, how does it relate to all these other things I'm doing? So it's like just this, it's just not a very efficient way of practicing. And I can tell you that, personally speaking, there are so many things that I heard him say many years ago that when I first heard it, I was kind of like, "Yeah, I don't know about that. Yeah, I don't know about that." And then automatically, some on years later, I just see it in a certain very similar way without even thinking about it or deciding why. Because the practice changed me, and then I automatically arrive at that position, not because it was cool, not because it was philosophically correct, not because any other reason other than I automatically ended up there without even doing anything other than doing the practice and changing the conditions. Which is like, people approach it the other way around of like, oh, the tradition believes this and they do this and they have these beliefs and all this stuff. And it's like, well, no, they arrived at these things probably as a consequence of going through this particular process. And if you go through the process, these different teachings are almost markers along the way. And when you're at a certain level or a certain stage or a certain whatever, the markers arise. You see things in a certain way, you experience things in a certain way, which happens and should line up with the prior experience of the knowledge of the tradition. And then you know, oh, okay, I must be somewhat remotely approximating what I should be doing, versus people come at it the other way. They try to manufacture it or cerebralize it of like, oh, well, I'm doing Neigong and it's basically just this, right? Or it's just tissue work, or it's just body work, or it's just lining up the bones, or it's just this, it's just that, it's just this, it's just that, or it's just like this, or it's like this, or it's like that, or it's just establishing the craniosacral rhythm, or it's just harmonizing the breath, or relaxing the nervous system, or all these derivative sort of things where people, oh, is it just this? Is it just that? It's like, no. The reason why you're wondering, I mean, myself included, the reason why people were wondering, and the reason why they're trying to fill in the gaps with all these things is because they're not actually in the thing. When you're in the thing, you're like, oh, that's what it is, which isn't really any of those things, which coincidentally, if you look at texts, if you look at the books, the classical teachings, it's always like, it's not this, it's not that, it's not this, it's not that, it's not this, it's not that. It's almost like they knew and they were trying to pass that on. But then us modern people, we think, I'm smart, I'm advanced, I'm smart, I did this meditation thing, or I studied this thing for so long, so I must know what I'm doing, I must be good. And then we encounter it, and then it's just conflict or poor results. So then you really have to be willing to have humility and be like, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing. I have no skill. I have no skill to speak of. I have no attainments. I have no understanding. I have no fucking clue what I'm doing. That's my personal attitude. I'm not saying you have to do that. I'm not saying that's how you are. I'm saying that's my personal attitude. So, as much as people might be like, you're talking about this in such a way that you must think you're better or you must be arrogant or whatever, like, no, my actual belief is I don't really know. I'm still trying. I fucking have nothing, which is motivating me to speak about it because I'm trying to figure some shit out. I'm trying to like move forward and progress. So every time I practice, it's the same shit of like, do I, what am I doing? Do I even know what I'm doing? Is this even this? Is this even that? How do I do this? Apply the conditions. I'm just like trying to figure it out. It's like the same, just starting over from scratch every day, but your scratch is like a different, a different. You're starting over from scratch every day, but you're building upon everything before it. Again, that's just my attitude and my experience. Not saying or making claims for anyone else or anything else. I just noticed that the vast majority of people that I talk to when I go to workshops or I go to trainings often have a very different experience and a very different interpretation of what is being said and taught. Whereas I'll have conversations with people and they'll say, he said this. And I say, no, he literally did not say that. He did not use those words. Zero, zero appearances of those words. No, no, he said that. No, no, no. He literally did not say that. That word was never used. That meaning was never implied. And they're like, well, no, but I heard that. I'm like, okay, yeah. You heard that. You didn't listen to what he was saying. So I can say basically that's a very common thing that I see. Versus when I talk to other people who are maybe having different experiences, and the closer their experience and their interpretation is to what's actually being taught and said, seems to be producing different results. I would say if it were me, I would Ken Wilber, Ingram, Kuladasa, Daniel Brown, Deperna, Arida. Yeah, I'm not going to say anything more about them other than if it were me, I would just throw all of that stuff away and get rid of it. And I can tell you a conversation I had with a friend of mine who believes that he's like a yoga master and is highly attained. But what he's doing is he's labeled physical flexibility and so, you know, decent degree of somatic awareness combined with marijuana induced disassociation and lethargy. He's conflating those with like spiritual attainment and like progress in yoga. So he's asking me, oh, maybe I'll start studying Neigong. Maybe I should study with Damo. And maybe I was too blunt, but he's my friend. And I was just like, wanted to be honest and not have him waste his time. And I was like, look, unless you're going to be willing to admit to yourself that your entire identity and the basis of what you've been doing for the last decade is all wrong, then don't waste your time with doing Neigong because you won't get anywhere. And he looked at me like I just shit my pants. And I said that because it's like, look, I had to do that. And when I did do it, things changed quite dramatically. And also, that is what has been taught multiple times. It's kind of like the baseline introductory concept for most of the traditions is like, yeah, all that stuff has to go. All that stuff is the problem. But you're like, oh, no, 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 it's fine. I'll still do it. And they're like, look, you're coming to us as sources of authority, but we're telling you what to do. And you're telling us as the source of authority that we're wrong. So, yeah. So, anyways, needless to say, that friend of mine did not pursue Neigong. Because what happens is you build up this identity for yourself about, oh, I'm spiritual and I've done this and I've done that and I'm smart and I can talk about all these things. Because the vast majority of the time, what people are labeling as spirituality, myself included, is trying to prop up their own identity, trying to feel better about themselves. They're trying to feel interesting. They're trying to feel better than other people to get some sort of power or status. The vast majority of the time, this is what is actually driving people, not because they're bad, but because we're human. And this is what drives us for most things, like, regardless of what it does, or regardless of what the context is, we're humans. This is what drives us. So if we're not willing to even engage at that level and that degree of honesty, then I think forget it. Like the rest of it is completely hopeless and not even ever going to produce any results because we can't even have the degree of honesty with ourselves about our actual motivations and intentions and our actual functioning. And I can say that personally, when I first heard this, I was like, nah, I don't know about that. No, not me. Like yeah, other people for sure, but I definitely not me. No. Like I'm different. I've studied these things and I've done all this and I have this and I have that. Not me. I wouldn't do that. No. Give it a couple of years, then all of a sudden one day I'm like, fuck. Damn it. Turns out this person that I labeled and put in an authority position and I was studying with them, turns out they were actually correct. Turns out this baseline fundamental introductory teaching of the tradition that I was labeling as worth studying, they were right. Oh my God. They knew more than me. What an idea. What a concept. Yeah, but I read all these books and I've done all these things and I studied with these teachers and I did this and I did this drugs and I did this plant medicine ceremonies and I went to this holistic workshop thing and I got um what if you actually had a genuine spiritual experience, maybe three, and now you just use it as a form of classism for people who have had it and those who hadn't? I would say that question and the corollary and associated mindset, which informs it and adds it as a question, is a perfect and prime example of the exact mindset that I'm describing. Because, yeah. Now, that's not to say that there aren't, of course, people who are legitimately skilled or attained in some capacity that then, of course, go to exploitation or go to, manipulating other people or having power over people or just all the ways in which human behavior can degenerate. Of course, there are historical figures who you can look at and be like, yeah, they were actually skilled. They actually did have something, but it just got polluted. So that's where it just gets to be a whole other gradation. But I think what people like to do again is pivoting and undermining and retreating, where it's like basically that question and whoever would ask it is basically like, oh, I'm defeated and I feel inferior. So I'm going to invent a different set of circumstances that'll put me back in a position of power or at least knock that person down or invalidate their position. And then that will allow me to regain some sense of empowerment in this hypothetical dynamic. That's what's actually occurring, in my opinion. Um, but that's what people do. And to be honest, I see people doing it with actually skilled teachers. Like, it's like, dude, what are you doing? You paid this money. You've dedicated these hours of your life, this years of your life to this thing, and it's very right in front of you, and you still cling to this way of going about things. Like, so to me, that confuses me. And I kind of chuckle about it too. So yeah. Anywho, Yeah, so that's it. I gotta go. I meant to go about 2 hours ago, but fucking here we are. And I just hope the length of this doesn't deter people from watching it because the first 30 minutes or so was actually the prime meat of the subject matter. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of getting some Marxist vibes here with all these isms, or like everything's a power struggle based on these little criterias of people, which reminds me of there was a teacher I went and studied with once, and the teacher said he spent the first hour of the workshop making fun of the people there. He was like, "Yeah, scholars will never get this practice." He's like, "All these people, they think they're so smart, so educated. They got their PhDs, they got all their degrees, they got their authorities, they got their science." He was like, "They will never get this practice. They will never progress in this." And I'm over in the corner dying laughing because I knew the exact people in the room that he was talking about. Uh, so I heard that and I was like, so then I looked at started thinking to myself and I was like, hmm, what does this actually mean? What is he really saying? Am I doing that? And I'm like, that's the actual essence and core of what he's saying. So that was useful. And I thought that was a funny story. And I think it's actually true. I've seen that to be quite true. Where all this intellectualism and Marxism dressed up in another way is just an obstacle. Maybe it's useful to navigate the world, maybe. But usually the fact that people would pivot to Marxism means they're basically in a disempowered, weak position. And rather than admitting that they're disempowered and weak or incompetent, they blame the system, or the game's rigged, or they're cheating, or other people are exploiting. And that's why I'm in this position. It's like, maybe that's true, of course, in certain situations. Or maybe you're just incompetent and unskilled and ineffective as a human being. Rather than admitting it, you accuse the other person of cheating or being rigged or whatever other fill in the blank. So then you buy into Marxist kind of ideas and start classifying and subclassifying and categorizing and recategorizing everything in these power struggles. And oh, the only reason it's this is because it's this. And then I'm like, well, or you could spend that time and energy developing actual skill and competency within something. You could lift yourself up rather than just trying to shit on and tear other people down. That's an option. That's an option we all have. That's a choice we all have available to us. And 99.9% of the time, when people were like, "Oh, I had genuine spiritual experience." Yeah, genuine for you because of whatever thing. But like, I would say it would be genuine if you came out of it with city. If you have like, if the hair on the if you walk into a room and people's shirts start crackling and popping from the static electricity of your chi, or you walk by people and they start sweating because your fucking chi is so strong, then yeah, you probably had a legitimate spiritual experience, 100%. If you don't have those skills, abilities, or qualities, maybe it was something else. That's not just my opinion. That's sort of, I think, what traditions have said classically throughout time. If this thing occurs, these are the side effects. If this thing occurs, this is the side effects. If this thing occurs, this is probably going to be the experience. But then we all want to feel cool about ourselves. But no, 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 no. They were wrong. What I experienced was that, but it's different, but it's the same, but it's different, but it's the same, but it's my experience, but it's special, but it's authentic, but it's unique, but it's this, but it's that, but it is, but it isn't. And it's like, well, do you have these skills, abilities? No. Okay, well then it probably wasn't. It was maybe something else. Maybe it was cool, it was awesome, it was impactful, it was a great experience, no doubt about it, but it wasn't this thing. And you're using these words, what these words mean these things, but then you don't have the things in which the words refer to, so then it's probably not the thing. Like if I said, "Yeah, I'm soaking wet right now, guys. I just got out of the shower and my hair is absolutely drenched and my clothes are just soaking me to the bone." It's like, "Well, no, because the definition of what those words means implies certain things would be present and they're not. So I think maybe you mean something else." "Oh, yeah, you're right. I mean dry. I mean, I'm completely dry right now." "Oh, that's a different thing." "But no, I'm gonna build my whole life around this and yell at everyone and defend it. No, mine was special. Mine was unique. Mine was different. I'm special." That's mostly again what it comes down to is people are going into these things and be like, "Look, I'm special. Look, I'm unique. Look, I'm different." When the traditions are all like, "No, you're not. You're a straw dog. You are irrelevant. You are a monkey at best. You're a carbon copy of a bunch of other carbon copies. You don't matter. You're not important. You're absolutely insignificant and trivial." That's kind of the teaching, but that's not where you start because you have to have a lot of self-esteem and fabric to be like, "Oh yeah, that's true. I am those things." Like, cool. I'm happy about that. Um, yeah, I'm not saying that you think you're special. I'm just saying a person who maybe would really buy into Marxist kinds of ideologies and would be like, "Oh, I had 3 genuine spiritual experiences and I'm cool." People that would maybe do that and build their identity around that, I think would want to feel special, which is why they're doing it. Otherwise, they just wouldn't mention it, because there's no need. It's kinda like, I'm not gonna come on here and talk about my bowel movement in the morning. Like, why? There's no Having a bowel movement is the most regular, average, normal activity. Well, it should be. For some people, it isn't, but it should be. So I'm not going to gain any social credit points or any identity validation by talking about that. Um, what if they are saying it because it really shocked their worldview? That doesn't mean it's a spiritual experience. Like my whole life, I never drank coffee. And then a few years ago, I'd had coffee for the first time and I liked it, whereas I'd always thought it was disgusting. That shocked my worldview. I had an out of body experience, when I was in my 20s. I had numerous out of body experiences in my 20s. Changed my worldview a little bit, but I wouldn't call that a spiritual experience. I would call it lucid dreaming and a out of body experience. That's not spiritual. That has nothing to do with it. So, yeah. Really insignificant. Cool, had an out of body experience. Yeah, I explored out of body experiences quite a lot, and it literally is what it is. And what I noticed is no skilled teacher that I ever met taught it or talked about it. So then I realized this might not have anything to do with anything. And people assume disembodiment and disassociation and disconnection is spirituality when it's like, no, it's literally just those things. Now, if I was came out of my body into blinding white light, uh, so are there interior realities filled with entities? Who gives a fuck? Like, who cares? Like, it makes no difference. Um, like, if I can't even master something as basic as Neigong or Qigong, why do I care about reality with entities? What difference does it make? Personally, I don't live in a reality with other entities, and I don't experience it, and if I did, it doesn't do anything for me. So, who cares? It has absolutely nothing to do with internal training or development or spirituality. Now, I'm not saying it's not entertaining or fun to talk about. I'm not saying hanging out with your friends, sitting around the dinner table as a topic of discussion. Like, did aliens mess with our DNA? Did aliens, come to the planet? Are they here now? Okay, yeah, fine. Like, conjecture and like shooting the shit with your friends, it's funny and entertaining. But as like something to invest your life and your time and energy into, it's completely trivial and insignificant. Has nothing to do with anything. Uh, and if it did, then they probably would have taught it and it would be in the practice, but it isn't. So that means it probably isn't. Yeah. How is what trivial? I'm not sure what you mean. You're talking about out of body experiences, you're talking about entities, you're talking about building rockets, you're talking about classism and Marxism and spiritual experiences. Like, what are you talking about? And what is trivial? Um, okay, out of body exploration. Here's what I personally mean. This is just for me. You can obviously, anyone is free to place their value however they wish. That's fine. I don't expect people to live and believe as I do. So, out of body exploration, what I mean is what's important to me is progressing through Neigong, um, in the path and the methodology which has been taught and given to me. That's what I view as important and useful and relevant. And that's what my goal is. So, out of body experiences have nothing to do with that. So, it's trivial because it doesn't lead me to the goal within the systems and the parameters and the frameworks that I'm working in. So, it's trivial. Just like I wouldn't go do ayahuasca or DMT. Sure, it might be a wild experience, but it has absolutely nothing to do with the path that I am working on and the goals that I'm trying to achieve and the qualities that I am trying to build according to what I've been taught and given from teachers that I respect. So, therefore, anything that's not that is trivial, meaning it's less important and less useful and less impactful, which is what trivial means, I think, at least in the way in which I'm using it. So, that's what I mean. It just depends on what your goals are because we each only have 24 hours in a day. We have a limited amount of time and energy on the planet. So, how do you want to invest it? That's really the question. Each person can ask about themselves. I don't think it implies much of anything about reality. I think there are aspects of our awareness which can very easily exist in ways in which don't perfectly line up with our pretty pathetic and weak modern scientific paradigm and idea about what the world is. Um, but the other thing too is like we have what someone defines as out of body can be very different. Like a tradition might have an out of body practice, but that's not what like some dude in his room smoking weed is. It's not the same thing. Like that's not what I was doing in my 20s. Like in my 20s, I was just like flying around my house, flying around my neighborhood, or like having lucid dreams and trying to have sex with women. I don't think that's the out of body experience that the Malshan sect is doing. We might use the same words to describe it, but the actual process and mechanics are not the same. Also, too, I had a bunch of other problems to sort out, a bunch of other issues to sort out, a bunch of other things in my life to do. Thereby, out of body experiences weren't really assisting in that process. So then it's not really that important. But again, like I said, what happens is teachers and people present here's the linear direct thread, here's the linear direct teaching, here's the linear direct practice. And then people go, oh, well, what about this? But what about that? But what about this? But what about that? What about this? What about that? Oh, is it like this? Oh, is it like that? Oh, it reminds me of this. Oh, they do all this corollary stuff, which is spinning your wheels and not development. Um, so yeah, that's all I'll say about it. I don't really kind of care about that sort of thing. Um, But interesting subject, I guess. I think it's probably interesting if you can't do it, and then trivial if you can. I guess for me, I did it so many times where I was like, "This is dumb. I'm over it." And actually had an experience which some people would probably call the experience I had as being spiritual, but I actually don't. Because this is the other thing too: is people will act like because I talk down about these sort of things that I don't have them or I don't think they exist. I have actually had a wide variety of them, um, of different strange encounters and strange experiences that have no rational or logical explanation, ranging from out of body experiences to a lot of other things that I don't really want to discuss publicly. But my point is, that's why I say they're trivial and why they're silly and why they don't matter and why it has no interest to me because of what I laid out and defined earlier. But again, it's up to each person to define their own goals for themselves and choose how they spend their own time and energy. Clementina says, I try to make my kid and other lonely people feel special. I get such a warmth in my heart when I find it. And when I find a heart to heart with, yeah, I agree with that completely. And I feel the same way. I think a distinction we have to make is that a lot of what I am saying most of the time is for spirituality or people that are like going into these endeavors. It's not for regular life. It's not for like regular human experiences. Because in the same token, I'm saying, oh, people want to feel special and do these things. Yes, because the embarking on something like trying to legitimately do spirituality or Neigong means you're going to have to like brutally destroy and sacrifice yourself, which means looking at all this shit that I always talk about that people say is so unpleasant. That's not normal life. That's the opposite of normal life. Normal life is build yourself up, feel special, be nice, be all these things, build your identity, keep building it up, and then die. That's normal. Whereas Neigong or spirituality, these things, it's tear it down, replace it, sacrifice it, dedicate yourself to the tradition, to the practice, to the thing. It's very opposite. And I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form that they should be the same. I'm not. In dealing with people and dealing with regular life, yes. And especially with children. Because the thing is, there are a lot of people on the planet that are just struggling. They're barely getting by. They're emotionally not in a good place. 100%. So the vast majority of everything that I say is not remotely relevant to them. Like, not at all. People oftentimes like that, they just need the content that's like more of a hug. So that's what I try to clarify for people is like, look, there's already plenty of channels and plenty of content that's like, look, everything's gonna be okay. Like you're fine. You can do it. People love you. You're worthy. You can do it. Like that sort of emotional reassurance and support that people need, plenty of other people are doing. That's just not really my strength or my mindset or my focus in life. Like I'd never really think like that for myself. I'm actually having to learn to think like that a little bit more in terms of dealing with people. But like the way I live my life and relate, it's more like focus, get shit done, improve efficiency, solve problems, understand situations. That's it. So that's kind of my experience. So what I'm saying is that's not what I'm going to be offering. 'Cause it's not really who I am. 'Cause it's not really what I do. It might change someday. Maybe I'll bridge over to something else and do something else and have a completely different mental quality and mindset. But if people are coming wanting that, they're come to the wrong place. And that's fine. That doesn't mean I'm bad or they're bad or anyone's bad. It's just we're different. And if people are wanting a certain thing, then go to the people that are doing that. There's lots of people that are doing that. And that's great. That's fine. That's what the world needs. That's what a lot of people need. But like if people want to get to the point of solving a problem or arriving at solutions or looking at things differently or moving out of situations or things more oriented towards that, cool. That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm here for. That's what my mindset is, and that's the point of my videos. So that's the context. So yeah, if you never understand what I'm talking about or none of it makes sense, then that's probably, a lot to do with it, and that's fine. I don't recommend what I do or how I think or how I live really at all. People ask me, should I study Neigong? Should I do this? No, you shouldn't. Don't even bother. Live your life, be regular, do things. Should I do Tai Chi? No. Run, lift weights, go to the gym, ride a bike, go swimming, do literally anything else. Have sex, do drugs, drink alcohol, be emotionally unstable, do chaotic things, stimulate yourself 24/7. Do that. Like, just don't worry about this bullshit over here. It's not worth it. Like, if the way I'm talking about things and going about things and my demeanor and my affect are bothersome, annoying, and unpleasant, yeah, then don't do it. Like, go do something else. It's fine. uh, I'm fully aware of that, about the distinctions in those different contexts. So, yeah. So yeah, I appreciate you saying that and for having that feedback and for showing up and being a regular. If there are so many people with high spiritual attainment, then how isn't that leading social? Isn't that the leading social paradigm? That is what confuses me so much because I think those things have nothing to do with each other. There's a misconception that we have in our world or in our culture where if someone has like a we people correlate spiritual attainment with altruism or humanitarianism when it has nothing to do with it. At least as I've been taught. Obviously, I'm not at that level, so I can't speak from personal experience. But as I've been taught and as I've seen and heard people speak about who have experience, those things have nothing to do with each other. Being altruistic is being altruistic. Being humanitarian is being humanitarian. Helping society in the world is helping society in the world. It has nothing to do with spiritual attainment, like at all. And how would you like it? Would you like a great example of this? I'll give you one. The best example of this is called Tibetan Buddhism. Ironically, in modern times, the Dalai Lama and Tibetan Buddhism is like the fucking paragon, top of the mountain of compassion and empathy and kindness, right? But then if we look at Tibetan history, the Tibetan Buddhist feudalistic hierarchy ruled Tibet, under which Tibetans lived basically in slave labor and existed to serve the ruling class. The ruling class, they didn't build a road, they didn't build a school, they didn't build a hospital, they didn't build an infrastructure, they didn't do literally anything for their people other than torture them, enslave them, and make them work for their benefit. Yet somehow they're the paragon pinnacle of compassion, kindness, understanding, but they enslaved their own population and hoarded massive amounts of wealth and treasure. But they're the paragons of compassion, but they enslaved their population. So, yeah, altruism is altruism, humanitarianism is humanitarianism, has absolutely nothing to do with attainment or being involved with human beings or even treated human beings well. And if what I'm saying isn't true, Ken Wilber just sounds like he's so smart that he eventually is just an idiot. I know that I apologize that that's rude, but everything that I hear about him and about he says is just basically like intellect overdeveloped to the point of uselessness. Yeah, I can tell actually. I can tell Wilbur's your main man. And I mean, he's absolutely extremely intelligent. No question about it. The dude is like next level intellect, but So what? I can tell you one teacher I had, because back when I thought it was really cool that I thought I was smart, right? This guy sat me down and he said, "Hey, you know what's really cool about being smart?" And I was like, "No, no, no, tell me." He was like, "That and $6 will buy you a latte." And I was like, "Cool, so it fucking doesn't mean anything." It was like, "Yeah, you can be super smart, and then, $6 you can buy a latte. It's cool." And I was like, "Okay, I get what you're saying. I get the joke." So after that point, I was like, "Okay, maybe I don't really just wanna emphasize and really go down that rabbit hole anymore because so what? Who cares? Big deal." So, yeah, I think smart people have difficulty with seeing what's absolutely right in front of them and then translating what's absolutely right in front of them into meaningful and useful action. And I can say that most of the really smart people I've met, I think, are actually quite dumb. And some of the quote unquote dumbest people I've met are actually quite smart. Why? Because number one, they can actually listen. They don't have all these barriers built up. So they can actually listen. Um, how could the intelligentsia that create our mainstream something sense making not know about spiritual experience and go to further not make that the aim? What are you what are you talking about? Like, we don't live in a cartoon, man. I think I think uh you're giving people way too much credit. Uh but yeah, I mean I think what I mean is uh humans are basically barely above apes and dogs. That's the general view. And I think if we look at history, that's the overarching dynamic. Of course, we're capable of more than that. We're capable of coming together and doing great things. We're capable of altruism. We're capable of creating beauty, but most of us aren't. The fact of the matter is, most of us are absolutely, completely driven by our fear and our anger, and that's it. If that wasn't true, then we'd all be out here changing the world and creating pinnacle level examples of art and culture and like literally changing things, but we aren't. So that implies that we aren't those things, myself included. Like, uh, I'm not Steve Jobs. I'm not, Johnny Ivy. I'm not Jimi Hendrix. I'm not, David Beckham or Michael Jordan or people that come along that just change everything, or a whole host of people in the spiritual kind of category. I'm not that. I wish I was kind of, but I'm not. And I'm guessing everyone on this live stream is not that either. So that means we're probably in the we're probably in the shit soup with the rest of us. So the idea that like the intelligentsia of mainstream sense making would not know about spiritual experience and make it the further highest attained, dude, you're talking about you're talking about people at the top of our human food chain that enjoy like diddling little kids. So you think they're going to be like, "Oh, we should all aim for spiritual experience and transcendence." Like, that's again communism and Marxism, dude. Like, these things are not for everyone. And there's no world in which it should be for everyone. Like, this egalitarian, communist, Marxist kind of ideology that keeps coming out in the questions, it's a fantasy. It's a fantasy because every single culture that's gone after it has ended in massive suffering, oppression, death, and violence. And the more popular that these kind of Marxist egalitarian ideas become, the worse society gets. Which, if we look at how basically uh, American culture is trending right now and how it's really spiraling downwards, it's because of these ideas, it's because of these ideologies and these belief systems. Predictably, just like every other culture that took them on. Who would have thunk it? So yeah, I would say definitely overestimating people in the elite class through and through. And I guess really even what do you even define as elite? An elite class, just having power, just having money, just having influence. That has nothing to do with being elite. That just means you maybe were good at developing schemas to acquire resources, or you inherited them, or you made some black magic, like disgusting deal, and sold your soul and traded your soul, and you're possessed by some kind of demonic force that's living off of you, but giving you this power and this life experience now, but you're sacrificing yourself over the long term. And you're going to spend eternity in some kind of hell realm in between state as a result of sacrificing your soul and yourself for this attainment of doing things. Maybe. So, yeah, I mean, maybe entities are real, but who cares? What difference does it make? Um, you know, the practical conclusion of that discussion is, yeah, don't sell your soul to an entity, even if it appears as a very great one. It's probably deceit. Other than that, I would say become healthy and vital enough that you're not experiencing entities. And if you're really experiencing entities, just move into a really crowded city and you probably won't encounter them anymore. And the thing is, a lot of what people label as like a spiritual experience is just indigestion or immunodeficiency that is manifesting on an esoteric way. But really, it's because they have indigestion, chi deficiency, and probably blood deficiency along those lines. And if they get rid of their chi and blood deficiency, all those experiences go away. So yeah. So it's people being like, the manifestation and the cause of my illness is actually special. It's like, really? So you're having these experiences because you're chi and blood deficient, and that's special, but wait, that's actually disease. Here's how you should fix it. Oh, wait, no, I can't do that. So then what do people do? Oh no, I've encountered an expression of competence, strength, and power. I can't have that. I need to shoot it down. Okay, why? Because if you actually develop those qualities within yourself, then the experiences that you're having and labeling as special or unique or interesting would by definition go away because they're only occurring out of deficiency. If you fill in the deficiency, then they go away. But let's not do that, because then our identity will have a temporary sense of discomfort because it will lose what we were doing, which we thought was special. So that's the conundrum we find ourselves in, which is why people obsess over unrelated data points, and can't follow a linear, straightforward path of development, and can't follow a linear, straightforward path of thought processes, and just veer off and do whatever. Um, no, I mean, I'm not saying that to you directly. I'm commentary on training in general. Um, I mean, feel free to keep engaging as much as you want. It's entertaining, and I think maybe other people maybe enjoy it as well. I don't know. I'm just saying there's definitely a difference between chatting in the thread and like what you're doing when you're sitting practicing and training. Um, but anyways, you asked questions, so I gave you my opinion and my perspective based on my limited experience. That's all I can do. You can make your own decisions and decide for yourself. And that's life. So yeah, I appreciate the questions and the comments, and for tuning in and for watching and all that kind of nature. Um, yeah, it's always a good learning experience, and it's good to explore certain things and concepts. So can you store chi in the lower dantian yet? I think so. Um, it doesn't really overflow into the central channel. It's not actually how it works. Um, I think he just puts that in the book because it's a outer door kind of public explanation, but that's not actually how it works. Yeah, he is lying. Absolutely. He lies all the time, as do most teachers, which is what I was trying to explain earlier. The central channel is so far advanced and so far beyond basically everyone that it's not even worth discussing. But because everyone wants to know about it and ask about it, you just give people kind of a generic response, kind of like distracting a baby with a toy, and they're like, "Oh," and then they forget about it and move on. That's basically what that is. But no, my central channel is not open. Um, that is pretty far down the line, to say the least. If I come on here and I have a halo and a white light surrounding me, then you'll know my central channel is open. And actually, if I'm in that state, I don't think I'm gonna be on fucking YouTube anymore. I can tell you that. I'm probably gonna be doing other things. But if I'm on here with a fucking halo, I'll then you'll know. Or if I'm on here and I'm actually on fire, but not getting burnt, then you'll know. Um, how has my Huang transformed? Do you have the Huang wetsuit? Yeah, I think so. I would say my Huang is not completely full. There's definitely a lot of development left, but the Huang is there and it's got some chi in it. Um, a halo is a person's aura. It's not actually, it's something completely different. A person's aura is a person's aura. Um, manifesting white light around you is something very different than a person's aura. A halo is not your aura. Two very different things. We all have auras. We all do not have halos. It's not an auric field. I know what you mean. I know what an aura is. I know what an auric field is. The halo in which I am referring to is not that. It is something far beyond that. Um, far, 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 far beyond that. Uh, it's not the auric field. Uh, um, well, if you want to know how my Huang is transformed, you can go back and look. I've been making videos for so long. You can see how there was a period of time where I gained like 40 pounds in a few months, or maybe it was like 30 and some change in a few months. And I went from 140 odd pounds to about 185, 190 pounds in a very short space of time. Some of that was my Huang, some of that was just damp from overeating, but something happened. And then I lost all of it and then got really skinny again. And then I gained some of it back and then I lost it. And then now I'm somewhere in the middle. Um, and I lost a bunch of weight, but I didn't actually shrink. So it's changed a lot, many different times over many different instances. And yeah, it's very clear when you go through it and the chi builds and it moves through different layers in the body through the thickening process. It is quite clear and quite tangible. And it is an actual, real, literal thing that is in your body and that you can move around and you can do things with. It's not abstract, it's not theoretical, it's not hypothetical, it's not I mean, it is kind of esoteric, but it also isn't. It's a bunch of things that when you have it, it's like, oh yeah, that's what that is. That's what that means. Which is what I said. That's kind of how the stuff works. Um, I mean, intention, yeah, kinda, but then also just pressurization. I mean, yeah, you can mobilize things in the body, but ultimately it moves through pressurization. So in order for it to really even move, you have to have enough to pressurize it to move through. and then whatever. Um, I mean, yeah, the development is completely tangible. I can look at someone's body and it's there. It's not really abstract. I mean, it is in the beginning when you can't do it, but when you actually start to engage with it and go through it, you're like, oh yeah, yeah, that's what this is. Um, and it's really not even that crazy complicated or difficult. My point is that what gets in the way is all the things that I described. Um, so yeah, the reason why people can't absorb and people don't have Ting and Sung is because of their personality and all of their past experiences and all of those things. So that's why I said that stuff has to go before you can actually interact with the process and get into it. Um, and that's also why a lot of people don't and can't. So yeah, there's that. Yeah. Why is it the questions start coming in? Like people start showing up after like 3 hours when I'm like when I'm tired and need to go eat. People need to show up at the beginning. uh, but yeah, I have to go. I need to eat. This is way longer than I anticipated, and I have things that I actually need to do um, in these days. Yeah. So let's see. Move by intention. Uh, yeah, Jordan's great. Definitely recommend Jordan and all the heaven, man, earth people. No, it's all good. I appreciate the questions. I appreciate showing up. It's not on you at all in any way, shape, or form. It's just been 3.5 hours and I'm tired. So I have to go eat and move around and do the things that I needed to do today, but it's all good. Um, maybe I should actually go eat some Burgerville or something, man. Go eat some fast food and some junk food. Get my Dantian filled back up with some cheese from a cheeseburger. Oh, that's what's funny about it. It's funny. It's making me laugh because a friend of mine has been trying to lose weight for years, and they try to eat really, really clean and really healthy. And then I just started eating worse, and I lost like 15 pounds. So that was funny. It's like my diet is shittier than it's ever been as an adult, but I'm healthier and my digestion is better, and I've lost weight. So build your spleen chi, folks. Anyways, thanks again. How is because I strengthened my earth element chi. That's how. Which again goes back to the tangibility component of Neigong. You do certain things, and then the literal physiological functioning of your body changes. And then the way in which you interact with certain aspects of life permanently changes as well. So the way in which I interact with food now is completely different than it was before. Why is it completely different? Well, not completely different, but a bit different than it was before. Why? Because I did X, Y, and Z practice enough so that certain things arose. How do I know that I did it enough? Because these things arose. How do I know that the things that arose were correct? Because that's what I was taught and that's what I was told. So it makes sense. So it's tangibility. Chi is not like I imagined it and I visualized my chi and I did these things. Like, no, I like did something and it created something and and that's a whole thing. And it's like, okay, well, that must be real then. Okay. So yeah, not that I recommend just eating like crap, but it was just an experiment that I was doing. And yeah, I think food matters a lot less than people really think, but it also depends on where you are and what your system is and how you're functioning. So I gotta stop talking. I've been on like I think honestly, this is also part of what I was just saying is there's some stuff I was doing yesterday and the day before, and for whatever fucking reason, I've just been talking like so much. Like I talked on the phone yesterday for probably like 5 hours. And then the day before that was like multiple hours on top of doing multiple hours live stream. So I was up late last night talking on the phone for like however many hours, 4 or 5 hours. And now I just did this 3.5 hour live stream. So I'm like, Jesus, I guess I guess I did something the other day because I'm just like, bzz, um, which is not typically what I do. So yeah, that's that. Do you recommend just applying yourself to the Lotus Neigong school exclusively, or also doing having Heaven Man Earth Tai Chi at the same time? Uh, Pick one. Uh, but I would say if you go through the Neigong process and you get things going, Tai Chi is a lot not easier, but it's more accessible. Whereas if you don't go through the Neigong process to get something going, Tai Chi is pretty much impossible. And I think even Damo said, like, you could do whatever from Tai Chi, but it might take you 10 years. Or you can just do it in Neigong in like a year and then jump into Tai Chi. And then, you know, it's a lot more accessible. Because the thing is, if you have no Chi, you can't do any art based on Chi. If your tissues are bound to your bone, you have no openness, which means you have no separation of the layers, which means you have no space for anything to move through. So that means you can't move anything through it, which means you can't do a practice which is designed to move things through it. It's kind of just straightforward. So either way, regardless of what you want to do, you still have to go through the I Ching Jing process and open the body and build something. There's no escaping that. Whether you want to do meditation or martial arts or Tai Chi or Xingyi or Neigong or whatever, that process is the foundation. And then once it's there, then you can kind of, do different things because now you actually have an engine or you have a workshop or a temple to do those things within. But if you don't build it, you don't have it. You literally cannot do them. So then people go to, well, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. What about this? What about that? And they go on all this like inquisitive intellectual journey because they don't actually have the mechanisms to do the thing. If you have the mechanisms to do the thing, then that intellectual journey is just kind of done because you're like, oh, it's this. Okay. And then you just do that. Focus on that. I would absolutely, if it were me, I would quit everything. I wouldn't do anything else aside from just that. Why I say that is pretty much what I started the conversation with is all the things that people are coming in with tend to prevent them from even being able to do the thing. So if you want to keep doing the thing, it's going to prevent you from progressing. Yes, when I say absolutely all of it, I mean all of it. I mean 100% all of it, everything. Done, over, quit, stop. When I mean everything, I mean everything. I don't mean everything but, I mean everything, all of it, done. Close the door, shut the door, throw it away, move on with your life. If you actually want to build skill in this thing, because if you do build skill in this thing, it eventually comes back, and then attention-based practices are a part of it. Meditation practices are a part of it. Vipassana kind of stuff are a part of it. But it's just instead of contriving it and coming at it from a place of not having skill or whatever, you go through the process. And then at the relevant stage, it arises naturally as something you should start doing because it's the next stage of your development that you need. So it's just, again, systematic process of development. If you try to skip it or you try to do things out of order or mishmash or change it around, then the results will be subsequently diminished, which means you'll waste your time, you'll waste your energy, your results will be not very efficient, and you'll probably be frustrated and eventually give up because it's not really working. I can say that just from my personal experience, I've done those things, I've made those mistakes. And then when I didn't, and I did them in a different way, results were better. And I've seen that in a lot of other people as well. So it's just a matter of dedication and discipline and focus and really being able to be clear in yourself as a person. And the more people can do that, the better off they feel. Because I can tell you there's people that I've seen who already have this kind of clear, focused mindset, and they develop like ridiculously fast. They come in and they don't even necessarily even know shit about shit. They've never studied the stuff before. They don't really know about it. Not even really that interested in it. But they come in, and because their mentality is already in a certain way, they progress like massively, like very, very quickly, to where I'm like, damn, like, I can't believe I wasted all that time and energy doing the dumb shit that I was doing. When they just come in, they're like, yeah, this, and this are happening. I was like, really already? Shit. But then I look and I'm like, oh, it's because their mindset is already formatted correctly. Their physiology, they're already healthy. They're already strong. They already have all these building blocks in place. So then the conditions are right. So when they jump into the practice, it's like, boom, done. Or not done, but engaged on moving forward. So that's why I say what I say and why I think it's very important. And also, if you look at the podcast I did with Damo, the reason why I asked him the questions that I asked him was specifically pointing out the common errors and things that people do that hold them back, which is why I asked him the questions and why I designed the podcast in the podcast, because I saw the most common things and the errors of mindset that people have where they view the subject in an incorrect way, which limits their results. Or they think Neigong is just this or just that or only this or only that. They trivialize it, they minimize it in some capacity, and that really works against them. So that was the point of the podcast, to try to overcome and clarify these things to help people get the conditions more correctly in place, myself included, to allow the practice to develop further and more quickly. That's why I asked him the questions that I did. And I tried to design questions that other people hadn't asked him, because most of the questions are like, what do you think about a Dantian? What do you think about this? What about this? What about that? What about aliens? What about this? What can you do? Tell me your powers. Show me a story. All this kind of just stuff. And I'm like, cool. What about actually engaging with the practice? So that's why I asked him. How long do you practice Wuji per day? I don't really. I do other things. I mean, I think I've held it for like a couple hours. I mean, in the workshop and some retreats, we had to hold it for like 2.5 hours. But really just depends. You go through stages where it's hard, then it's easy, and then it's hard, then it's easy, and it doesn't matter really the time. It's more so the quality. But like in the beginning, you just have to put in the time and energy to get your body to actually understand what it is and what you're trying to do. But when you actually get it right, it's not a muscular endurance exercise. Yeah, that's the way to start it. You just can do it in intervals. But the thing is, it's quality, not quantity. It's not a muscular endurance exercise. And it's not something you can really accurately discern for yourself. You need a teacher. You need someone who knows how to do it to look at you and say, oh, do this, do that. Because the presumption is you don't know what you're doing because you're learning the skill. So if you don't know what you're doing, then how can you accurately teach and diagnose your own errors? Can't, which is why you need a teacher. That's why we all do. Because the implicit thing is, I don't have this skill, but I want it. Okay. If you don't have it, then you're not necessarily always going to be the best person to correct yourself. Sometimes, yes, of course, but not always. That's why you need an objective authority figure to be like, hey, this is what you need to do. So that's why teachers exist, I think. But yeah. Okay. Anyways, thanks for all the questions. These are great subjects, great subject matter. I'd be happy to discuss it all and answer more questions about it in more detail in future live streams. um, anytime. But again, 3.5 hours. I need to eat lunch and do things. So, anyways, thanks again for tuning in. And I hope you enjoy your day wherever you are. And I'll talk to you soon.